Ναι. Λοιπόν, αγαπητοί επίσημοι, αξιότιμοι συνάδελφοι, κυρίες και κύριοι, καλημέρα σας. Σας καλωσορίζουμε στο πρώτο Διαβαλκανικό Συνέδριο Δημιουργία Διαβαλκανικού Δικτύου Παραστατικών Τεχνών, όροι και προϋποθέσεις, και παρακαλώ την πρόεδρο του Κρατικού Θεάτρου Βορείου Ελλάδος και ομότιμη καθηγήτρια και τέως κοσμητόρισα της Νομικής Σχολής του Αριστοτελείου Πανεπιστημίου Θεσσαλονίκης να απευθύνει χαιρετισμό την κυρία Γιαννούλα Καρύμπαλη-Τσίπτσιου. Και πριν, κυρία Πρόεδρε, να επισημάνω ότι μεταξύ μας, εκτός από τους επισήμους και τους υπουργούς και τον Αντιδήμαρχο, έχουμε τους πριτάνης του Ελληνικού Ανοικτού Πανεπιστημίου και τον κύριο Εμμανουήλ Κουτούζη και τον πρίτανη του Εθνικού Πανεπιστημίου Θεάτρου και Κινηματογράφου του Βουκουρεστίου, τον κύριο Λιβιού Λουκάτσι. Κυρία Πρόεδρε, παρακαλώ.
Dear Deputy Secretary of Contemporary Culture and representative of the Prime Minister at the present conference, dear Deputy Secretary of the Macedonia Thrace sector of the Ministry of the Interior, dear Rector of the Hellenic Open University, dear Rector of the National University of Theatre Film, dear Deputy Mayor of Thessaloniki, dear guest speakers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for your presence here at the first Inter-Balkan Conference of Performing Arts, which is also the first event organized within the framework of the Memorandum of Collaboration between the National Theatre of Northern Greece and the Hellenic Open University. In particular, I would like to express thanks for the fact that this conference is being held under the auspices of the Macedonia Thrace sector of the Ministry of Interior. Mr. Gilekas, thank you very much. The Ministries of Education and Tourism and the municipalities of Thessaloniki and Thermi. Mr. Gakis, thank you very much, which is a great honor for us. I would also like to thank for their cooperation the director of the Laboratory of Ancient Rhetoric and Dramatic Art of the Department of Philology of the University of Peloponnese, and the president of the Society of Friends of the European Cultural Center, Mr. Markadonakis and Mr. Markadonatos and Mr. Koukis. Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Ladies and gentlemen, the broader Balkan region has an immense wealth of cultural resources, both material and immaterial, and can bear witness to and showcase the folk and learned cultures of the Balkan countries as they have evolved through time. One expression of the region's immaterial cultural resources are the performing arts in their various guises, which play an important role as witnesses of culture. If indeed this fact is taken into account, together with the undeniable multiculturalism of the Balkans, with the diverse ethnic, linguistic, and religious groups, the importance of a dialogue between distinguished academics and representatives of the performing arts from Greece and other Balkan countries, a dialogue focusing on ancient, modern, and contemporary theater, as well as musical theater and dance, becomes eminently clear. The conference that begins today marks the beginning of such a dialogue and aims to be the starting point for the development of a holistic network of performing arts in the Balkans, one that can support inter-Balkan cultural collaboration and through this cultural cross-fertilization between the Balkan countries. I wish the conference every success as the first step in the creation of an inter-Balkan network of performing arts, the prospects for the construction of which seem most promising. Thank you for your attention. Παραβιάζοντας το πρωτόκολλο των καλωσορισμάτων, θα παρακαλούσα τον Υπουργό και το πρωτόκολλο μεταξύ των επισήμων. Θα καλούσα στο βήμα τον κύριο Γιουλέκα, τον Υφυπουργό Εσωτερικών του τομέα Μακεδονίας Θράκης, που πρέπει να αποχωρήσει άμεσα. Thank you to be among us.
I would like to present and call to the podium Mr. Konstantinos Gioulekas, who has to leave very quickly. Mr. Konstantinos Gioulekas, he's the Deputy Minister of the Interior, Sector of Macedonia and Thrace.
Σήμερα εξηγούσα στον συνάδελφό μου και τον πολύ καλό φίλο, τον Υφυπουργό Πολιτισμού, τον Ιάσονα το Φωτήλα, ότι η Θεσσαλονίκη γιορτάζει το συμπολιούχο της, τον Άγιο Γρηγόριο τον Παλαμά, και είναι σε εξέλιξη ήδη η Θεία Λειτουργία, οπότε αναγκαστικά πρέπει σε λίγο να βρεθούμε και εκεί, γιατί όλοι μαζί, όλη η πόλη γιορτάζει αυτή τη σημαντική γιορτή. Καλή σας μέρα. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ για την πρόσκληση. Θα ήθελα καταρχήν να καλωσορίσουμε και τους φίλους οι οποίοι έρχονται από άλλο κράτη. I would like to welcome in our country, in our city, our friends from Balkan countries, our neighbors, because we are a great neighborhood here, and it's very important for us because we are in an emblematic building in which the cultural health of northern Greece beats here, just here. And for that, we believe that this cooperation will be a bridge between our civilizations, between us. It's an open conversation for the development and for the culture too. Θεωρώ πάρα πολύ σημαντικό το γεγονός ότι εδώ στο Κρατικό Θέατρο, που από το 1960 που ιδρύθηκε αυτή η κρατική σκηνή, η δεύτερη κρατική σκηνή στην Ελλάδα, λειτουργεί και χτυπά πραγματικά η καρδιά, η πολιτιστική καρδιά και η θεατρική καρδιά για όλη τη Βόρειο Ελλάδα. Γίνεται αυτό το πρώτο διαβαλκανικό φόρουμ και ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ το Ανοικτό Πανεπιστήμιο, γιατί συμπράττοντας με αυτή την κοιτίδα του πολιτισμού, είναι βέβαιο ότι ο κόσμος του πολιτισμού και ο κόσμος της γνώσης από κοινού μπορούν να προαγάγουν αυτή την ιδέα και να τη μετουσιώσουν σε κάτι πάρα πολύ σημαντικό, ειδικά όταν έχουμε κοντά μας και φίλους οι οποίοι μας τιμούν από τα υπόλοιπα κράτη και θέλουν να συνεργαστούν μαζί μας. Εξάλλου αυτό είναι και ο πολιτισμός. Είναι μια διεθνής γλώσσα επικοινωνίας, είναι ένας τρόπος για να έρθουμε κοντά ο ένας με τον άλλον. Και χαίρομαι ιδιαίτερα γιατί κοντά μας έχουμε τον καθήλυνα αρμόδιο της ελληνικής κυβέρνησης για τα θέματα αυτά, για τον νεότερο πολιτισμό. Έχουμε τον Υφυπουργό Πολιτισμού, τον φίλο μου, τον Ιάσονα το Φωτήλα. Ιάσονα, καλώς ήρθες για άλλη μια φορά στη Θεσσαλονίκη. Ξέρω πόσο αγαπάς τη Θεσσαλονίκη, ξέρω πόσο αγαπάμε και οι δυο το θέατρο, αφού πέραν όλων των άλλων παίξαμε σε παραστάσεις θεατρικές από την αγάπη μας για τον πολιτισμό και άρα νομίζω ότι δεν υπάρχει πιο κατάλληλος άνθρωπος να εκπροσωπήσει αυτό το χώρο από άτομα που είναι μοιημένα στο χώρο και όχι απλώς που αγγίζουν έτσι, το αντικείμενο που τους έχει ανατεθεί. Με αυτές λοιπόν τις σκέψεις και επειδή ο Ιάσονας ο Φωτήλας είναι και ο εκπρόσωπος της ελληνικής κυβέρνησης σε αυτή την πολύ σημαντική εκδήλωση, εγώ αποχωρώ από το βήμα, σας εύχομαι καλή επιτυχία, ζητώ συγγνώμη, μην το θεωρήσετε αγένεια που δυστυχώς δεν μπορώ να μείνω περισσότερο μαζί σας, αλλά είμαι βέβαιος και θα πληροφορηθώ τα αποτελέσματα της σημερινής διάσκεψης, του σημερινού φόρουμ, από τους διοργανωτές. Είμαι βέβαιος ότι τα αποτελέσματα και τα συμπεράσματα θα είναι πολύ σημαντικά. Να είστε καλά, καλή σας μέρα.
So I need to leave earlier because there is a church in Thessaloniki that's holding a mass today celebrating Grigorios Palamas. So sorry to be leaving earlier. First of all, good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you for the invitation, and I would like to welcome our guests from other countries. So the National Theatre of Northern Greece was created in 1960 and has been operating ever since. It is indeed the cultural center of Northern Greece, and we are very happy for that. We are also happy to be hosting the first Inter-Balkan Forum. And at this point, I would like to thank the Hellenic Open University for its support. It is a great thing when you see that knowledge and culture are met, and this beautiful idea is turned into something more practical. Indeed, it's very beautiful to see all those people coming together and organizing such a conference. At this point, I would like to welcome our Deputy Minister of Culture, Mr. Iason Fotilas, with whom we used to participate in theatrical performances in the past. I think that your place really suits you. You are the perfect representative for that. And he is representing the Greek government today. So sorry again to be leaving earlier, and I really hope that you enjoy this conference. Thank you.
I would like to thank you about your understanding, but we have to also join our friends from World Wide Web. We have live streaming from this conference, so we have to keep them informed in order to understand what happens here. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ για την κατανόηση. Πρέπει να μεταφράζουμε ταυτόχρονα τόσο για τους παρόντες ξένους φίλους μας εδώ, όσο και για τους ανθρώπους που παρακολουθούν διαδικτυακά την εξέλιξη του συνεδρίου.
Και καθώς αλλάξαμε τη σειρά, εγώ λέω να καλέσουμε στο βήμα τον Υφυπουργό Σύγχρονου Πολιτισμού και εκπρόσωπο του Πρωθυπουργού της χώρας στο σημερινό συνέδριο, ευχαριστώντας τον θερμά για την παρουσία του. Ευχαριστώ.
Since we have changed the program, I would like to welcome now the Deputy Minister of Culture and the spokesperson of the Prime Minister in today's conference, Mr. Iason Fotilas.
Και θα ακολουθήσουν τα καλωσορίσματα.
And afterwards, we will welcome the rest. Thank you.
Πριν ξεκινήσουμε, να πω σε όλους ότι χθες ξεκίνησε μια υπέροχη παράσταση, μια εξαιρετική πρεμιέρα στο Κρατικό Βορείο Ελλάδος και σας καλώ όλους να μην τη χάσετε, γιατί πραγματικά είναι πάρα πολύ αξιόλογη. Τώρα, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, friends, it is both an honor and a pleasure to welcome you all to the Inter-Balkan Conference on Performing Arts, hosted here in the historic and culturally rich city of Thessaloniki by the National Theatre of Northern Greece. And this honor is even greater as I stand before you representing our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, and conveying the greetings of our Minister of Culture, Lina Mendoni. This gathering is a testament to the enduring power of culture a force that transcends borders, political divisions, or historical complexities. Today, we come together not just as representatives of different nations, but as members of a shared cultural legacy, one that has been shaped by centuries of interactions, mutual influence, and creative expression. The Balkans is a region with a deep and intertwined history, with diverse traditions, languages, and artistic expressions, have continuously influenced one another. Our cultural roots stretch back to the ancient world, when theaters, music, and dance served as a means of storytelling and social connection. Even during times of division, cultural expression remained a bridge, reminding us that despite our differences, we share more than what separates us. Consider, for instance, the traditional Balkan folk music, which, despite its many local variations, is bound by common rhythmic structures, instruments, and melodies. The sound of the ghazal in Serbia, the kaval in Bulgaria, the clarinet in Greece, and the tambura in North Macedonia speaks to a shared musical heritage that unites rather than divides. Similarly, our theatrical traditions, whether influenced by ancient drama or Byzantine liturgical dramas, Ottoman era storytelling, or modernist European trends, reflect a deep commonality in themes, narratives, and artistic sensibilities. Culture knows no boundaries. It does not submit to imposed limits, nor can it be confined by artificial divisions. Throughout the history of the Balkans, shifting borders and geopolitical tensions have often separated our people. Yet, even in the face of such challenges, culture has always been there, ready to bridge gaps, mend rifts, and bring joy and understanding where politics have failed. Theater, music, dance, and the performing arts have consistently served as a universal language through which our people communicate, celebrate, and dream together. This conference is not merely an academic or artistic meeting point. It is a symbol of our shared commitment to dialogue, collaboration, and creative synergy. For the Ministry of Culture, this event will serve as an invaluable resource, offering insights, ideas, and initiatives that will further enhance communications and cooperations across our nations. It is through such exchanges that we can shape a more integrated cultural landscape, one that fosters meaningful artistic partnerships and paves the way for even greater collaboration. I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the National Theatre of Northern Greece for organizing this important initiative. It is an endeavor truly worthy of its historic legacy, one that responds to the questions of our time and the challenge of building a common future for the Balkans. This conference is a call to embrace our shared cultural heritage, to celebrate our artistic diversity, and to forge new paths of cooperation that will enrich us all. May this gathering inspire us, strengthen our connections, and reaffirm the profound truth that culture, and this is very serious, remains our most powerful and unifying language. Thank you very much.
Συνεχίζοντας την ανορθοδοξία που το ξεκινήσαμε έτσι, να καλέσουμε στο βήμα τον Αντιδήμαρχο Πολιτισμού του Δήμου Θεσσαλονίκης, τον κύριο Γάκη, τον οποίο ευχαριστούμε πολύ που είναι μαζί μας.
We would like to welcome now Mr. Vasilios Zougakis, the Deputy Mayor of Culture, and thank you very much for being here with us today.
Hello, everyone. With great joy, I welcome you to our city, Thessaloniki, and to the first conference to create a cross-Balkan network for performance arts. Thessaloniki is a place where cultures and ideas meet. Its rich history, lively art scenes, and location in the heart of the Balkans make it the perfect spot for this important event. Today, we start building a network to connect artists and groups in the Balkans. Our goal is to create a space where artists can share ideas, work together on projects, and show their art to more people. This network will help grow cultural dialogue and creativity in our region. By working together, we create new opportunities for artists, celebrate our cultural heritage, and build a vibrant arts community in the Balkans. I believe this conference will lead to create discussions and new ideas. I wish you all success in your work here and a wonderful stay in our city. Thank you very much.
Επανερχόμενοι στη σειρά, θα παρακαλούσα τον πρίτανη του Ελληνικού Ανοικτού Πανεπιστημίου να απευθύνει το δικό του καλωσόρισμα, που η σειρά του ήταν να είναι μετά το δικό μου.
Back to our program now, I would like to welcome Mr. Emanuelis Koutousis, Director of the Hellenic Open University, for addressing your welcome.
Thank you, Professor. Dear Deputy Secretary of Culture, Mr. Fotilas, dear Deputy Mayor of Culture of the City of Thessaloniki, Mr. Gakis, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests from here, Greece and abroad, dear participants, it's really a great honor for me to welcome you in this first Inter-Balkan Conference on Performing Arts, aiming at establishing an Inter-Balkan network on performing arts. As director of the Hellenic Open University, I am both proud and excited to co-organize, along with the National Theatre of Northern Greece, which I thank so much, and to, of course, to see such a diverse and distinguished group of scholars, artists, and practitioners from our neighborhood gathered here today, united by a shared passion and, of course, united in trying to find ways or a common ground in order to establish a network. I am not going to talk to you in front of such an audience. I wouldn't dare talking to you about performing arts, as my knowledge does not go beyond the knowledge of a true, however devoted admirer of the performing arts, and I'm not going to use cliché expressions about the importance, the significance of the performing arts, and the self-evident in our days necessity of the cooperation among the Balkan states. What I'm going to tell you in about 2 or 3 minutes is talk about our university and how happy we are that we have recently established the postgraduate course in performing arts. Professor Markadonatos, who is the director of our program, has played a key role in that, and I thank him honestly. And I should also mention my colleague, Professor Emeritus Argyros Lukaki, who has really contributed in that. So here at the Hellenic Open University, we pride ourselves on fostering interdisciplinary approaches to learning, innovation, and critical thinking. Our institution is dedicated to make education accessible to all and empowering students to explore, question, and contribute to the fields as diverse as the performing arts. And it is this with this spirit that we have brought together experts and enthusiasts alike from various corners of the Balkans to discuss the current state and future of performing arts and attempt to establish a network. Our university has recently turned page, and we are trying to establish ourselves not only in Greece, but also internationally. We also participate in various alliances, European alliances. Quite recently, we got involved in a very important European Open Universities alliances. But I honestly feel that we should find ways to cooperate, apart from our European partners, we should find ways to cooperate within the Balkans. And that's why I'm so happy to have you here. And I'm so happy that the aim of this conference is to establish a network among Balkan universities, Balkan states. I truly believe that there is a future in the Balkans, and if we find common grounds and common understanding and common language, I'm sure that the potential is there to establish very, very strong alliances. As a truly open university, we are thrilled to offer a platform here for such an engaging and necessary conversation. The exchange of ideas and collaboration that will take place here during these 2 days is not only essential for the advancement of the field, but also for enriching our shared understanding of what it means to perform, to create, and to experience the arts in the 21st century. Let me just tell you that I'm really happy to announce that we are in the really final stages of signing the memorandum of understanding. Actually, this cooperation here is part of that memorandum, but it's only the final stages that remain with the National Theatre of Northern Greece. And I'm sure that this memorandum will allow us to enhance our cooperation from now on into various other areas. And I'm really proud and I'm really happy for that cooperation, Mrs. President and Mr. Director. So we are here for you to cooperate in various areas that we might find of mutual interest and in common grounds. So let me just finish by saying that I would like to take a moment to extend my gratitude to the organizers, the keynote speakers, the panelists, each and every one of you here today. Let me just mention my colleagues, staff of the Hellenic Open University. Some of them live in Thessaloniki, some of them came from Patras to help. Let me just help them, all of you. Thank you so much for your help. And I'm confident that the discussions here we will have, the questions we will pose and the new perspectives we will gain will continue to inspire us along even and after the conference. I don't have anything more to say. Just once again, a warm welcome to all our colleagues and friends from the Balkan states. Nice to have you here. I feel myself, as part of the city now in Thessaloniki. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sure there are things to be done from now on. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Rector, for your welcome speech. Dear President of the Society of Friends of the European Cultural Center of Delphi, I invite you to take the floor for your welcome speech.
Κυρίες και κύριοι, εκφράζω τη χαρά μου για τη διοργάνωση του πρώτου Διαβαλκανικού Συνεδρίου στον τομέα των Παραστατικών Τεχνών με θέμα «Δημιουργία Διαβαλκανικού Δικτύου Παραστατικών Τεχνών, όροι και προϋποθέσεις». Συγχαίρω πρωτίστως το Κρατικό Θέατρο Βορείου Ελλάδος, το Διοικητικό του Συμβούλιο, την Πρόεδρο κυρία Καρύμπαλη και τον Καλλιτεχνικό Διευθυντή κύριο Πελτέκη. Όπως επίσης και το Ανοικτό Πανεπιστήμιο και τον Πρόεδρο κύριο Κουτούζη. Για αυτή την πρωτοβουλία, από την οποία είμαι σίγουρος ότι θα προκύψει μια δημιουργική και καρποφόρα συνεργασία με ιδρύματα της Χερσονήσου του Έμμου, τα οποία διακονούν με αξιοσύνη τις παραστατικές τέχνες. Με τον καλλιτεχνικό διευθυντή κύριο Πελτέκη και τον καθηγητή κύριο Μαρκαντονάτο συνεργαστήκαμε επιμελώς για την υλοποίηση αυτής της εξειδικευμένης ιδέας. Και επειδή βρισκόμαστε ακόμα στην αρχή της προσπάθειας, με καλή θέληση και με προσεκτικά βήματα, θα εργαστούμε για μια σύμπλευση με αποτέλεσμα και διάρκεια. Υπάρχει και η διάθεση και η πείρα. Με τον κύριο Μαρκαντονάτο συμπορευθήκαμε κατά τη θητεία μας στο Διοικητικό Συμβούλιο του Ελληνικού Ιδρύματος Πολιτισμού. Ως φιλόλογοι, θέσαμε στρατηγικό στόχο την ενίσχυση της κατά τη γνώμη μας πληττόμενης κλασικής παιδείας. Δεν ξέρω αν το καταφέραμε και σε ποιο βαθμό, ωστόσο το βέβαιο είναι ότι δεν εκφράσαμε απλώς τις θεωρητικές μας ανησυχίες, δεν μείναμε δηλαδή αδρανείς, αλλά διοργανώσαμε διεθνή συνέδρια για τον αρχαίο δραματικό λόγο, προσκαλώντας σημαντικές προσωπικότητες από την Ελλάδα και το εξωτερικό σε συνεργασία με αξιόπιστα ιδρύματα. Έτσι, διοργανώθηκαν 5 συνέδρια με τη συνδρομή του Εθνικού Θεάτρου, του Ελληνικού Οργανισμού Τουρισμού, του Δήμου Σαλαμίνας, του Εθνικού και Καποδιστριακού Πανεπιστημίου Αθηνών και του Πανεπιστημίου Μπάρι Αλντομόρο. Η συγκομιδή υπήρξε πλούσια και πρωτότυπη. Εκδόθηκαν 5 πολυσέλιδοι τόμοι πρακτικών σε επιμέλεια πιστών και ενθουσιωδών φίλων συνεργατών, για τα οποία είμαστε περήφανοι. Και όλα αυτά σε 3,5 χρόνια. Λόγος επενετικός αξίζει στη Δέσποινα Κοσμοπούλου για την οργανωτική της προσήλωση. Η σκητάλη τώρα λαμβάνει σε ένα παρεμφερές πεδίο το Ελληνικό Ανοικτό Πανεπιστήμιο και το Κρατικό Θέατρο Βορείου Ελλάδας. Οι φίλοι του Ευρωπαϊκού Πολιτιστικού Κέντρου Δελφών ενώνουμε τις δυνάμεις μας για αυτή τη διαβαλκανική συνεργασία. Προσωπικά χαίρομαι ιδιαιτέρως γιατί ως πρόεδρος του Ελληνικού Ιδρύματος Πολιτισμού εντυπωσιαζόμουν από το σφρίγος των εκθέσεων βιβλίου στα Τύρανα, το Βουκουρέστι, τη Σόφια, την Μπάνια Λούκα, το Βελιγράδι. Αλλά και η Θεσσαλονίκη μας, ως πρώτη φιλοξενούσα πόλη του πρώτου Διαβαλκανικού Συνεδρίου, αποδεικνύεται διαχρονικά πολιτιστική δύναμη, αλλά και διάβλος επικοινωνίας με τους Βαλκάνιους φίλους μας. Κυρίες και κύριοι, απευθύνω τα συγχαρητήριά μου στους συμμετέχοντες, οι οποίοι αγκαλιάσατε θερμά αυτή τη δημιουργική απόπειρα και εύχομαι ολόψυχα καλή επιτυχία.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to be here at the first Inter-Balkan Conference on Performing Arts, titled The Creation of an Inter-Balkan Network of Performing Arts, Terms and Conditions. I'd like to congratulate the National Theatre of Northern Greece, its Board of Directors, Madam Chairman, Mrs. Karibali, and the Artistic Director, Mr. Peltekis, as well as the Open University, the Hellenic Open University and its President, Mr. Koutouzis, for this initiative. I'm sure it will prove to be a fruitful collaboration alongside institutions from the Balkans related to performing arts. Alongside the artistic director, Mr. Peltekis, and Professor Mr. Marcadonato, we collaborated diligently in order to realize this specific idea. We are just at the beginning, however, we are good-willed and we are about to make some really careful next steps, hoping that they will last. We are, after all, we are dedicated to it. So alongside Mr. Marcadonatos, we work together at the Board of Directors of the Hellenic Foundation for Culture. As professors of Greek, we set a particular aim that is to reinforce classical education. I don't know if we succeeded in that and to what extent. However, we didn't just stay on a theoretical level. We didn't remain passive. We tried to organize international conferences about ancient drama, and we invited many important people from Greece and abroad, and we also collaborated with foreign institutions.
This way, we had a chance to organize 5 conferences with the contribution of the National Theatre, the National Organization of Tourism, the Municipality of Salamina, and the National Capodistrian University of Athens, along with the University of Bari. I have to say that the result was very rich and fruitful. us, we succeeded in publishing 5 volumes of minutes with the collaboration of very enthusiastic friends, and for which we're very, very proud. And all that lasted only 3.5 years. And special thanks to Ms. Despina Kosmopoulou for the contribution in that. And now we have this particular project. We proceed with that. The Hellenic Open University, along with the National Theatre of Northern Greece and the Friends of the European Cultural Center of Delphi, we unite our forces to this inter-Balkan collaboration. Personally, I'm very happy because as a president of the Hellenic Foundation of Culture, I was particularly impressed by all these book fairs in Tirana, Bucharest, Sofia, Banja Luka, and Belgrade. And now it's the Thessaloniki. It's our turn as the hosting city of the first Inter-Balkan Conference to prove that it is indeed a cultural force and to serve as a communication channel for all our Balkan friends. Ladies and gentlemen, let me address also my congratulations to the participants who particularly embraced in such a warm way this creative initiative, and I wish everyone success in that. Thank you.
I would like to ask you both to use the microphone for those watching us online, because they didn't have the sound otherwise.
Can't hear us?
Ολοκληρώσαμε το πρώτο στάδιο με τα καλωσορίσματα και τους χαιρετισμούς. Νομίζω ότι κάποιοι από εμάς μπορούμε να αποχωρήσουμε από το πάνελ, έτσι ώστε να αρχίσει η πρώτη συνεδρία. Σωστά? Σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ και πάλι. Thank you very much. Πάμε.
Άλλος, ξεκινήσει κατευθείαν, δεν προλάβαμε. Τα όλα έτοιμα να τα πούμε. Δεν είχα περιλάβει. Δώξα το μήνυμα του Secretariat Πού ήταν, και μετά επειδή είναι χαρακτηριστικά, κάναμε το ευθύντης καταλάβει. Δεν πειράζει, το κάναμε τα δεν προλογίσαμε.
Στο φύλαμε. Πολύ καλά.
Ωραία, εδώ να δεις.
Πάρα πολύ καλά. Καλά, όποτε μετά δεν είναι πέρα. Και εγώ.
So, we will continue by the opening speech of Andreas Liberatos. He is an associate professor from Pantheon University, and the title of his presentation is The Balkans, the Politics of Representation and Beyond. Professor.
Dear distinguished, can you hear me? No. Okay. Well, dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen,
I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers for inviting me to open this conference and wish every success to the initiative undertaken to build a Balkan network of performing arts. I will try in my introductory address to give you an overview of the emergence and various semantic layers of the notion the Balkans, the politics of representation associated with it, and the ways one can transcend it and use it in the direction of regional and transnational cultural cooperation. Etymologically, the word Balkans comes from the Turkish language and means a mountain or a wooded mountain. It refers to the range which transverses and divides in two parts today's Bulgaria, and its smaller counterpart which follows it from its southern side. So it's Buyuk Balkan and Küçük Balkan in Turkish, Stara Planina, Sredna Gora in Bulgarian, Hemus and Mesonoros in Greek. The idea behind this signification is that a mountain, acting as a dividing factor, can isolate a part of land additionally isolated by a sea, a peninsula. It was the German historian and geographer Christian Joseph Gatterer who first gave in 1775 to the Iberian Peninsula the name the Peninsula of the Pyrenees, followed by August Choine, who in 1808 spoke of the Italian peninsula as the Peninsula of the Alps. It is in this same work by Choine, the work Gea, Earth, that the term Balkan Peninsula appears for the first time. Curiously, this baptism is incorrect from a geographical point of view. It is based on the false idea inherited from the ancient times that the mountain Hemus, the Balkan range or Stara Planina, transverses and isolates the entire peninsula all the way from the Black to the Adriatic Sea, ending opposite the Gulf of Venice. This mistake is recurrent in the itineraries of Europeans into the region, and it appears also in the pre-19th century maps of European Turkey. The technical problem here. Okay. Okay, you can see it here. Here are a couple of maps showing the mistaken continuous Balkan range, and here is the actual stretch and dimension of the range. It was a matter of few decades, of course, for the European scientists and geographers to correct this misperception, yet the term was not abandoned. In his monumental work, La Péninsule Balkanique, the renowned Serbian geographer Jovan Cvijic remarked, "It is useless to recriminate. The term Balkan Peninsula is today in usage." Genetically speaking, then, the first semantic layer of the notion the Balkans comes from the geographers. The Balkans, the Balkan Peninsula, is initially a geographic term. The second semantic layer, and one which is more relevant to the humanities, is the employment of the word in order to denote a political ordering of space. The use of the term Balkans, or its equivalent forms in other European languages, in this sense, did not follow shortly the establishment of the geographic term. In the middle decades of the 19th century, the region, which later was named the Balkans, bore still for the Western Europeans the name Turkey in Europe, and for the Ottomans the name Rumeli, the land of Rooms, the Orthodox Christians of Eastern faith. The political use of the notion the Balkans was a product of the new geopolitical configuration which followed the Berlin Treaty of 1878, with the Ottoman Empire losing part of its European dominion, new autonomous states emerging, and three states, Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro, gaining independent status in the region. The British conservative politician and historian John Marriott expressed this clearly in a passage from his book, The Eastern Question, in a chapter characteristically labeled Physics and Politics, in which he pointed to the discrepancy between physical and political geography.
In strictness, the description applies only to the lands to the south of the Great Divide, formed by the Sarm Mountains and the Balkan Range. It excludes, therefore, a great part of Serbia and the southern Slav provinces, as well as the whole of Romania. In the following pages, the Balkans will, however, be used as synonymous with the Turkey in Europe of our forefathers. In this way, the geopolitical term, the Balkans, emerges in the last quarter of the 19th century as a term of convenience. It denoted both the remainder of Turkey in Europe and the new independent and autonomous state entities established in former Ottoman dominions. So, if geography provides the first and geopolitics the second signification layers, intertwined in the notion of the Balkans, the new convenient European geopolitical notion began since its emergence at the end of the 19th century, its turbulent course in history. Shortly after their introduction and acceptance in the European political vocabulary, scientific and public discourse, the Balkans acquired very quickly a particularly negative image. Journalists, writers, and politicians traveling in the region played an instrumental role in creating and conferring this image of the Balkans and shaping accordingly their own public opinion. Just for making the presentation more lively, let's see a couple of examples. The English officer, traveler, and discoverer Harry de Wind gave in his travelogue in 1908 to the Balkans the title Through Savage Europe, because, as he argued, the term describes perfectly, I quote, the wild and lawless countries between the Adriatic and the Black Sea, which were, again quotation, hotbeds of outlawry and brigandage, end of quotation. Harry de Wind writes his travelogue after the 1903 Ilinden uprising in Macedonia, in a period when the so-called Macedonian struggle and the phenomena of ethnic strife reached their apogee. Moreover, in 1903, the Serbian royal couple Alexander Obrenović and Draga were assassinated and thrown out of the window of their residence by military conspirators supporting the rival dynasty of the Karađorđević. The assassination shocked the public opinion of a largely monarchical Europe. The British journalist Herbert Vivian publishes in 1904 his book, The Serbian Tragedy and Some Impressions from Macedonia, in which he constructs a romantic image of the Balkans as a place of adventure and brigandage, which reminds the readers of the European Middle Ages. For the sake of impression, he illustrates his work with this photo of an unknown to us bandit in Macedonia, holding before the camera the cut heads of his comrades or rivals. The turbulent life of small and unstable states of the Balkan Peninsula in the beginning of the 20th century and the exacerbation of their violent confrontation between them, phenomena real and verifiable, were interpreted from the Western opinion makers largely in a schematic and stereotypical ways as expression of the wild and primitive nature of the Balkan peoples. This image will crystallize with the Balkan Wars and World War I. The assassination of Prince Francis Ferdinand of Austria in Sarajevo gave to the Balkans the name powder keg of Europe, and to Western authors, such as the American John Gunter, author of a much-read book after the 40s, to close any discussion about the origins of World War I. The negative image of the Balkans will be used from the interwar period onwards by fiction writers and filmmakers, providing resources for the imagination of the Western public. The well-known criminal novelist Agatha Christie invents in 1925, in her novel The Secret of the Chimneys, the fictive Balkan country Czechoslovakia, the birthplace of her hero Boris Anchukov, described in this pejorative and ironic way. Well, it is one of the Balkan states, isn't it? Principal rivers? Unknown. Principal mountains? Also unknown, but fairly numerous. Capital? Bucharest. Population? Chiefly brigands. Hobby? Assassinating kings and having revolutions. It was finally at the end of World War I, with the collapse of the empires, Russian Empire, the Austrian-Hungary, and afterwards the Ottoman Empire, and the prospect of the appearance of many new national states, a prospect feared by those who wanted to unify the Central European economic space, that another pejorative use of the Balkans appears in the term Balkanization, a term still in use widely and not only in the political vocabulary. The term means fragmentation of a viable political unit into rival and not quite viable small states. As Paul Scott Maurer, correspondent of the Daily Chicago News, defined it, Balkanization is the creation in a region of hopelessly mixed races of a medley of small states with more or less backward populations, economically and financially weak, covetous, intriguing, afraid, a continual prey to the machinations of the great powers and to the violent promptings of their own passions. So this very brief sketch of the emergence and the negative image of the Balkans, shortly after the introduction of the term into the European political vocabulary, leads clearly to the following observation. The complete negative palette of the Balkans came into being during the first decades of the 20th century, and more specifically, during the Balkan Wars, when the attributes of violence and ethnic hatred were articulated upon earlier Western perceptions of the region, which depicted it as a semi-civilized and sui generis part of the Ottoman Orient. One shall stress the timing. It is during a period of war, geopolitical instability, and restructuring that these stereotypes come to the foreground. When the principal power actors seek, on the one hand, to secure their interests in the emerging New World Order, and on the other hand, to negotiate their relationship with events which challenge the moral basis of their claims to power. And I'm referring, of course, to imperialist antagonisms, World War I, and the punishing Paris Peace settlements. Many decades later, once more in the wake of events of global significance, a reactivation and an extremely vigorous spread of stereotypes about the Balkans came to the foreground in our contemporary world. I am referring, of course, to the collapse of the Soviet bloc and the concomitant geopolitical restructuring of the world, whereby the Second World was doomed to disappear. The victory of the Western Bloc in the Cold War created an unstable international environment within which discussions on identities, historical regions, and the legitimacy of claims of inclusion flourished as far as the countries to the east and southeast of Central Europe are concerned. In other words, the incorporation of the region to the Western sphere of influence set the stage and the terms for the reactivation of a politics of representation, which would A, secure the ideological hegemony of the winners, and B, mobilize the anxiety of the new national elites of the defeated former Second World countries to gain incorporation into the First World and not to slip into a position of a pariah Third World country. The problematic incorporation of the Balkans into post-1989 Europe, accompanied by war, ethnic conflict, derailed this politics of representation to overtly essentialist discourses in which the stereotypes of the 1910s and 1920s for the barbarous Balkans were readily reactivated. Robert Kaplan's Balkan Ghosts is an outstanding example. Kaplan went as far as to claim that Nazism can claim Balkan origins. Among the flop houses of Vienna, I quote, a breeding ground of ethnic resentments close to the southern Slavic world, Hitler learned how to hate so infectiously, end of quote. Another example is George Kennan's introduction to the new edition of the Carnegie Endowment Report on the Balkan Wars of 1913 under the title The Other Balkan Wars, in which he attributes an almost inbuilt aggressive nationalism to the Balkan peoples rooted in a distant tribal past. During the first crystallization of the stereotypes about the Balkans in the early 20th century, no serious complaints were heard and the natives of the Balkans internalized to a great extent the negative images civilized Europe made of them and tried to shake them off, developing peace and cooperation initiatives. At the end of the 20th century, however, unlike the interwar period, a wave of critical resistance towards this politics of representation was raised. The ground for the discussion had been prepared by the publication more than a decade earlier, in 1978, of the seminal work Orientalism by the Palestinian-American literary critic Edward Said. Let's see how Said defined Orientalism. Taking the late 18th century as a very roughly defined starting point, Orientalism can be discussed as the corporate institution for dealing with the Orient, dealing with it by making statements about it, authorizing views of it, describing it, by teaching it, settling it, ruling over it. In short, Orientalism can be discussed and analyzed as a Western style for dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient. End of quote. Let's consider the wording a little bit closer. Please pay attention to the verb Said uses. Deal, dealing with the Orient. A verb which stresses the relationship at encounter between West and East. What kind of relationship is this? It is a relationship of domination, a power relationship of a crude form, which corresponds to European colonial expansion and rule over the rest of the world. Dealing, then, could be expressed in other words as managing a relationship of domination. Then what Said argues is that the form of power exercised, colonial domination, is inherently related with the style of power. And this style, characterized as specifically Western, is one characterized by a close relationship between power and knowledge. Or in other words, a central place is given to knowledge in the process of exercise of power. Knowledge, narration, representation, the way one speaks and writes about the Orient, the bodies of fiction or scientific literature produced by writers and especially by scholars specialized in Oriental studies are central for the exercise of Western colonial power over the Orient. Said's Orientalism was accepted with strong and mixed feelings in the international academia, depending on both theoretical and political positions. Its discussion had repercussions in academics working on the region of the Balkans already in the 1980s, predominantly in the work of anthropologists such as Catherine Verdery or Robert Hayden and Milica Bakic-Hayden. Verdery referred to the Orientalism unleashed in the 20th century against the communist East, predicated upon the older Orientalism, and the Haydens explored the rhetorics of Yugoslavian Orientalism in the background of emerging ethnic tension in post-Tito Yugoslavia. It is normal and understandable that after 1981, it was Said's Orientalism that formed the first framework and theoretical model for liberal and radical academics working on the Balkans in their effort to oppose the reactivation of stereotypical discourse both for and within the former Balkan countries. Probably the most original and influential adaptation of the Saidian framework can be found in the work of Serbian anthropologist Milica Bakic-Hayden on nesting Orientalism in the former Yugoslavia, in which she analyzes the transfer of the stigma of the uncivilized successively from one to the other Yugoslav people in the context of the dissolution of the country. The discussion on the representation of the Balkans was ignited by the Bulgarian historian Maria Todorova, first in her article in Slavic Review in 1994, and then in her path-breaking book, Imagining the Balkans, published 3 years later in 1997. In her book, Todorova argued for the existence of a distinct discourse on the Balkans, which she termed Balkanism, by analogy to Said's Orientalism, and set out to investigate its emergence and formation in the past through a detailed study of Western travel literature and political writings on the Balkans since the 17th century. This is how she retrospectively referred to her book thesis and to her relations with Said's thoughts and legacy. In Imagining the Balkans, I argued that a specific discourse, Balkanism, molds attitudes and actions towards the Balkans and could be treated as the most persistent form or mental map in which information about the Balkans are placed, most notably in journalistic, political, and literary output. In introducing the category of Balkanism, I was directly inspired by and at the same time invited critical comparison to Said's Orientalism as well as the subsequent literature on post-colonialism. Here is a brief account of the common traits and the differences of the two discourses analyzed by Said and Todorova. The most important differences regard A, the concrete geographical and historical character of the Balkans vis-à-vis the vague metaphoric definition of the notion of the Orient, despite the fact that Said had in his mind actually Palestine in the era of colonialism. B, the lack of formal colonial domination in the region of the Balkans, comparable to the one exercised in the Middle East, and see the existence of certain important commonalities between the West and the Balkans, which to a large extent account for their perception as part of Europe, albeit a peripheral and degenerated one. The above-mentioned differences produced two different discourses in terms of content. The representation of the Balkans does not share the utopian, exotic, and imaginary character of the Orient. Wealth, luxury, harems, slaves, sexual mores belonging to a non-Christian civilization. The Balkans, on the contrary, are depicted as poor, rough, wild, uncivilized, an image that could serve only as inspiration of Gothic-style bravery tales. Second, the transitional status of the Balkans in all Western description as opposed to the complete antithesis in the description of the West versus the Orient. This manifests itself, of course, in the symbolic apparatus for describing the Balkans. The Balkans have the image of the bridge and crossroads, the most banal metaphor in and for the Balkans. We are in between the West and the East, a bridge between the two. And B, in expressions which stress the transitional character. In stages of growth, the Balkans are semi-developed, semi-colonized, semi-civilized, and semi-urbanized, as the humorous figure of Aleko Konstantinos by Ganiu perfectly exemplifies. So, if Orient is an imputed opposition, the Balkans is an imputed ambiguity. This ambiguity, Todorov argued, is discursively useful because it shakes off the reproaches of racism, colonialism, and Eurocentrism from the European gaze. But on the other hand, it is dangerous and causes anxiety as it brings to the fore supposedly superseded stages of development of civilized Europe itself. The Balkans are the land of contradictions, I quote, where everything is the exact opposite of what it might reasonably be expected to be. So despite their differences and despite the challenges they received, the bodies of critical Balkanism after Todorova and post-colonial criticism after Said have in the first decades of this century succeeded in dismantling stereotypical discourses and sensitizing intellectuals and artists on the crude Eurocentric operation of this politic of representation about the Balkans. The legitimate question, however, which almost automatically arises is the following. Are the Balkans only what Western imagination, political or literary or artistic, makes of them? Is there something beyond the politics of representation which can serve as the basis of alternative identity and cultural politics? Let me then finish in the briefest possible manner by sharing with you a couple of thoughts on this question, which I understand is critical for a venture as the one this conference is pursuing. And let me argue outright in the affirmative. Yes, there is a series of shared and common characteristics between the different national cultures of the Balkan peoples and the Balkan countries. Todorov argued that a historical region can be seen in non-essentialist terms as a palimpsest of the successive influences exerted over it by different historical legacies. The Balkans, or most of them, she argues, share the defining influence of the long Ottoman and Byzantine rule. More than anything else, in her view, the Balkans are the Ottoman legacy. The late Trajan Stojanovic adopted a longue durée perspective and attempted an impressive construction in his seminal work, The Balkans, the First and Last Europe. Many other outstanding figures of letters and culture in our region, from Nicolae Iorga to Jovan Cvijic, Ivan Sismanov, to name just a few of the pioneers, as well as huge body of literatures in the different fields of the humanities, have identified the existence in the Balkans of shared cultural features, elements, patterns, worldviews, and mentalities. Their work developed through numerous initiatives in the past, starting from the interwar period, the first Balkan Institutes, the Balkan Conferences of the 30s, the Little Entente of Women, and reaching the post-war activities of the Association Internationale des Études Sud-Est Européennes. And this work constructed a common cultural space, which seems to become more feeble in post-1989 period, but still it is there as a source of reference and inspiration. Any construction entails, of course, a degree of arbitrariness, and the things I mentioned above about the construction of the image of the Balkans make this, I think, quite clear. But by itself, the fact that initiatives for inter-Balkan cooperation as this one come to the front, I think it's very encouraging. To my view, the raison d'etre of such initiatives transcends the self-affirming retrospective operation of digging into the past and bringing to light the common background of our national cultures. After all, the identification of differences and the dialogue between different perceptions and attitudes is equally legitimate. And one can argue it can be more inspiring and creative than the self-assuring display of similarities. What makes imperative this dialogue and cooperation is the common structural position of the neighboring Balkan countries, not only in the past, but also in today's turbulent world. Although it took some time for all to realize, the fall of the Iron Curtain and the painful transition of the ex-socialist countries to market economy provided a test ground for policies which would be later implemented in non-ex-socialist parts of the region. The standard of living in the Balkan countries has converged, but is still far from satisfactory in an unjust international division of labor. The problems the Balkan societies encounter today are often very similar, and Novi Sad and Tempe catastrophes is the most recent example. Despite all that, despite all these common elements, the flow of information and communication at all levels, from journalism and politics to intellectual and cultural production between the Balkan countries, is still insignificant and is doubtful whether it has the potential to create new forms of life and culture. This is why an initiative such as that of this conference is more than welcome and has great significance for our societies. Giving again my congratulations to the organizers who undertook this initiative, I will finish by saying this. Even if there were no common or related elements in the pedigree of our national cultures, which of course there are a lot of them, we should still cultivate our dialogue as neighboring countries facing similar problems of cultural and social orientation in a very, very difficult era. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Liberatos, and we continue by the keynote speech of Andreas Markadonatos. He is professor of Greek at the University of the Peloponnese and director of the MA program in Performing Arts at the Hellenic Open University. And the title of his presentation is Establishing a Balkan Network of Performing Arts Terms and Conditions.
Right. Thank you very much, Despina, for this kind introduction. Distinguished guests, dear all, dear colleagues. The Balkan region, a historical crossroads of cultures and civilizations, boasts a rich and diverse performing arts heritage. Each nation within the region has developed its unique artistic traditions, yet the interconnectedness of cultural expressions across borders is undeniable. Despite this wealth of artistic potential, cooperation in the performing arts remains fragmented, often hindered by political divisions, logistical barriers, and insufficient institutional support. A formalized Balkan network of cooperation in the performing arts would serve as a catalyst for artistic mobility, cultural diplomacy, and innovation, enabling collaboration between artists, institutions, and policymakers while fostering a shared cultural identity. Such a network would not only strengthen artistic ties across the region, but also provide Balkan artists with greater visibility on the international stage. This speech explores the necessary steps for establishing such a network, focusing on structural organization, funding strategies, collaborative opportunities, policy advocacy, digital integration, and long-term sustainability. A well-functioning network must first establish clear objectives and scope to ensure its effectiveness. The network should primarily aim to enhance artistic exchange by creating opportunities for cross-border performances, co-productions, and artist residencies. Through these initiatives, artists and institutions could integrate diverse Balkan traditions while pushing the boundaries of contemporary artistic expression. Additionally, the network should facilitate educational and training programs, offering workshops, masterclasses, and mentorship opportunities for emerging artists. Beyond fostering creative collaboration, the network must also advocate for stronger policy support from national governments and international cultural organizations, ensuring that performing arts in the Balkans receive adequate funding and recognition. A central goal should be to improve access to financial resources for independent artists, particularly those from underfunded sectors. The scope of the network should be inclusive, incorporating theater, dance, opera, musical theater, and contemporary performance practices, while respecting both traditional and avant-garde forms of expression. To function effectively, the network must adopt a robust organizational structure that ensures transparency, efficiency, and equal representation across all participating countries. A central coordinated body should be established to oversee administration, fundraising, and strategic planning. This entity could be headquartered in a neutral Balkan city with strong artistic infrastructure. I'm thinking of Belgrade, Sofia, or Thessaloniki. To ensure decentralized participation, regional hubs should be set up in major artistic centers such as Athens, for example, Tirana, Sarajevo, Skopje and Zagreb, each facilitating local engagement and supporting initiatives within their respective cultural communities. An advisory board composed of prominent artists, cultural policymakers, and academic experts should provide strategic guidance, helping the network remain relevant and adaptive to the changing artistic landscape. Furthermore, the network should operate on a membership system welcoming theaters, festivals, conservatories, and independent arts organizations, as well as individual artists. To maintain democratic governance, an annual General Assembly should be held, allowing members to propose initiatives, review progress, and collectively shape the direction of the network. One of the greatest challenges in sustaining such a network lies in securing long-term financial support. A sustainable funding model must be developed, drawing from diverse sources, European Union cultural programs, such as Creative Europe and Erasmus+, provide grants for cross-border artistic collaborations and would be a crucial source of initial funding. National governments could also play a role in co-financing projects that enhance regional artistic cooperation. In addition to public funding, the network should seek partnerships with private sponsors, cultural foundations, and philanthropic organizations invested in the development of performing arts. To diversify revenue streams, the network could establish a hybrid model incorporating crowdfunding initiatives and a membership fee system, where institutions contribute financially while offering subsidized access to independent artists. A co-production funding model could also be implemented, whereby multiple institutions across different Balkan countries pool sources to develop joint artistic productions. A vital aspect of the network's success would be its ability to foster meaningful collaborative opportunities among artists and institutions. An annual Balkan Performing Arts Festival could serve as a flagship event, rotating among different host cities each year and showcasing co-productions, cross-border performances, and experimental artistic projects. In addition to larger scale festivals, the network should facilitate year-round artist residencies and exchange programs, enabling performance directors and choreographers to work in different Balkan countries and engage with local artistic communities. Touring productions would also be instrumental in bringing Balkan performances to broader audiences, helping to cultivate regional artistic appreciation. Training and capacity building initiatives should complement these efforts, offering specialized workshops, dramaturgical laboratories, and skill development programs for emerging talents. Digital platforms could further enhance these collaborations by providing virtual masterclasses, live stream performances, and online forums for creative exchange, thus ensuring accessibility even for artists in more remote locations. Beyond artistic collaborations, the network must also engage, at least in my view, in policy advocacy and cultural diplomacy. Strengthening institutional support for performing arts in the Balkans requires engagement with policymakers at both national and international levels. One priority should be to secure easier visa and travel regulations for artists moving within the region, removing bureaucratic obstacles that hinder artistic mobility. Additionally, the network should promote arts education and advocate for increased public funding, ensuring that performing arts remain a cultural priority within national budget. Establishing formal cultural agreements between governments would facilitate deeper cooperation between institutions and encourage long-term investment in regional artistic collaborations. In an increasingly digital world, the network must embrace technology and media to expand its reach and visibility. A centralized digital platform should be created to promote events, facilitate networking, and provide access to funding opportunities. A strong social media presence would help build engagement, allowing artists and audiences to interact dynamically within the network's activities. Live stream performances, digital archives, and interactive discussions could further enhance the region's artistic accessibility, providing a means for Balkan artists to connect with global audiences. A dedicated online archive documenting Balkan performing arts history, featuring digitized plays, dance performances, and interviews would serve as both an educational resource and a tool for cultural preservation. By leveraging digital innovation, the network would transcend physical borders and establish itself as a vital hub for artistic exchange. Ensuring the long-term sustainability of the network will require continuous adaptation and strategic planning. Regular evaluation mechanisms should be implemented with annual reviews assessing the network's impact and refining its strategies based on feedback. Financial sustainability should remain a key priority, with diversified funding sources, reducing dependence on a single revenue stream, encouraging new leadership by engaging younger generations of artists and cultural managers will also be crucial in maintaining the network's dynamism. Ultimately, the network's success will depend on its ability to remain responsive to the evolving artistic landscape while upholding its core mission of fostering regional collaboration. The establishment of a Balkan network of cooperation in the performing arts has the potential to be a transformative initiative, uniting artists across borders while strengthening cultural diplomacy, innovation, and international recognition. By fostering collaboration, securing sustainable funding, and embracing digital tools, the network could serve as a platform for artistic excellence and cross-cultural dialogue. With a collective commitment of artists, institutions, and policymakers, the Balkans could emerge as a thriving and unified force in a global performing arts scene, demonstrating that beyond political and historical divisions, art remains powerful and a powerful medium of connection, shared heritage, and mutual understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Markatonatos. We continue by Asterios Peltekis. He's an actor, a stage director, but also artistic director of the National Theatre of Northern Greece. And the title of his presentation is Inter-Balkan Network of Performing Arts, Creating a Mandate for Our Era. We have to translate this.
Dear honorable rectors, presidents of both Cyprus and Greece theater organizations, professors, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I would like firstly to express my gratitude to both those present by person and those watching us online. And I would like to share with you a thought about the language that I have to use in this speech. I was thinking that it would be... I had a great dilemma about which language I have to use, and I was thinking that language is a very important element of our culture and civilization. So I do believe that we have to, in the process of this next conferences, we have to find a way to have a simultaneous translation in order to each participate have the opportunity to use the language of his country. That's why I prefer to speak in my language, and we have the translators here. I would like to thank them also about their great job. So I will continue in Greek. Αγαπητοί φίλοι, αξιότιμοι κύριοι αποχωρήσαντες και παραμείναντες, θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσω και ειδικά και τον πρόεδρο του Θεατρικού Οργανισμού Κύπρου που είναι μαζί μας. Συμβολικά έχει μεγάλη σημασία γιατί πέρα από την περιοχή των Βαλκανίων ανοίγουμε σε μια περιοχή ευρύτερη της νοτιοανατολικής Ευρώπης και μέσα από τα μνημόνια συνεργασίας που ήδη έχουμε με κάποιες χώρες οι οποίες δεν ανήκουν αμιγώς στη Βαλκανική Χερσόνησο, αλλά είναι στην ευρύτερη περιοχή της νοτιοανατολικής Ευρώπης και πιστεύω ότι θα ήταν καλό να έχουμε από τώρα στο νου μας ένα άνοιγμα και προς αυτές τις περιοχές. Το θέμα αυτού του συνεδρίου ήταν η αναγκαιότητα της δημιουργίας ενός διαβαλκανικού δικτύου παραστατικών τεχνών και το θέμα του συνεδρίου ήθελε να είναι ο τρόπος για να δημιουργηθεί αυτό το διαβαλκανικό δίκτυο παραστατικών τεχνών. Οι προτάσεις οι δικές σας από ανθρώπους της τέχνης και από τους ακαδημαϊκούς και θεωρητικούς κύκλους της τέχνης, των τεχνών, των παραστατικών τεχνών, για να μπορέσει να δημιουργηθεί αυτό το δίκτυο αρχικά με στόχο ένα φεστιβάλ το οποίο να περιέχει ταυτόχρονα την πρακτική και τη θεωρητική πλευρά των τεχνών μας και η μία να επηρεάζεται και να επηρεάζει την άλλη. Η ίδρυση ενός δικτύου παραστατικών τεχνών στην περιοχή των Βαλκανίων, η οποία αφορά ουσιαστικά στο μεγαλύτερο μέρος της νοτιοανατολικής Ευρώπης, αποτελεί μια προοπτική η οποία δείχνει να μετατρέπεται σε επιτακτική ανάγκη για τη διατήρηση της καλής γειτονίας και της επικοδομητικής ανταλλαγής πολιτιστικών και πολιτισμικών στοιχείων και κατ' επέκταση για την περαιτέρω ανάπτυξη της περιοχής, ώστε να μην μείνει πίσω από τις εξελίξεις τις οποίες επέφερε η συστηματική λειτουργία της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης σε οικονομικό, κοινωνικό και πολιτικό επίπεδο. Η περιοχή των Βαλκανίων με την πλούσια πολιτιστική κληρονομιά και την έντονη πολυπολιτισμικότητα ως χαρακτηριστικό στοιχείο της ιστορικής της διαδρομής, αλλά και τις ταυτόχρονες οικονομικές και πολιτικές προκλήσεις τις οποίες αντιμετωπίζει ανέκαθεν και οι οποίες κορυφώθηκαν τον προηγούμενο αιώνα και στις αρχές του αιώνα που διανύουμε, αποτελεί μια εξαιρετικά ενδιαφέρουσα σε όλα τα επίπεδα περιοχή. Με όλες τις ζυμώσεις και τις αλλαγές οι οποίες επήλθαν με τις πολιτικές, κυρίως και ιδεολογικές εναλλαγές στα συστήματα διακυβέρνησης, καθώς και τις αλλαγές τις οποίες τα γεγονότα αυτά επέφεραν στην καθημερινότητα και με ένα modus vivendi το οποίο διαμορφώθηκε μέσω αυτών στη νέα πραγματικότητα, στη νέα πραγματικότητα των βαλκανικών χωρών σίγουρα δεν περνά απαρατήρητη στην ιστορία της παγκόσμιας κοινότητας. Η σύσταση ενός πολιτιστικού δικτύου στην περιοχή αυτή, εκτός από δυνατότητα, δείχνει να είναι ουσιαστική και να καθίσταται απαραίτητη για την ανάπτυξη στον τομέα του πολιτισμού για μια συνολική και ενιαία βαλκανική πολιτισμική ανάπτυξη. Η δημιουργία όμως ενός τέτοιου δικτύου, απαραίτητου όπως επισημάναμε, σαφώς διέπεται και από μια σειρά τόσο θετικών όσο και αρνητικών στοιχείων και προεκτάσεων. Στα θετικά στοιχεία περιλαμβάνονται η πολιτιστική κληρονομιά και η ποικιλομορφία στα πολιτιστικά και πολιτισμικά στοιχεία. Η ευρύτερη περιοχή των Βαλκανίων γνωρίζουμε όλοι ότι χαρακτηρίζεται από μια πλούσια πολιτιστική κληρονομιά, η οποία περιλαμβάνει μουσική, χορό, θέατρο, εικαστικές τέχνες, καθώς και κάθε μορφή τέχνης και τεχνικών. Η ίδρυση ενός δικτύου παραστατικών τεχνών θα μπορούσε να ενισχύσει την προβολή αυτής της κληρονομιάς, να προωθήσει την καλλιτεχνική ανταλλαγή και ακόμα, γιατί όχι, να οδηγήσει στη δημιουργία μιας πλατφόρμας, η οποία θα μπορούσε να συμβάλλει δραστικά στη διατήρηση αλλά και την καινοτομία στον χώρο της τέχνης γενικώς, αλλά και στον χώρο των παραστατικών τεχνών. Ο διαπολιτισμικός διάλογος και η συνεργασία, δεύτερο όφελος, η προαναφερθήσα πολυπολιτισμικότητα, η οποία διατρέχει την ιστορία της περιοχής, με πληθυσμούς που ανήκουν σε διαφορετικές εθνότητες, θρησκείες και γλωσσικές ομάδες, θα μπορούσε μέσα από τη δημιουργία ενός τέτοιου δικτύου να λειτουργήσει ως γέφυρα για το διαπολιτισμικό διάλογο, προωθώντας έννοιες και πρακτικές για την πληρέστερη κατανόηση και τη διαφύλαξη της ειρήνης στην ευρύτερη περιοχή, μέσα από τα ουμανιστικά πρότυπα και τα ωφέλη παρόμοιων πρακτικών και επιρροών, οι οποίες προκύπτουν μέσω της τέχνης. Επιπλέον, η ενίσχυση της κοινωνικής συνοχής, μια ακόμη θετική προέκταση στην οποία θα μπορούσε να φανεί ωφέλιμη η ίδρυση του υποσυζήτηση και διερεύνηση δικτύου. Η τέχνη μπορεί και αποδεδειγμένα είναι στις περισσότερες των περιπτώσεων ένα ισχυρό εργαλείο για την ενίσχυση της κοινωνικής συνοχής και την αντιμετώπιση κοινωνικών προβλημάτων όπως η ανεργία ή ο κοινωνικός αποκλεισμός. Στο πλαίσιο της λειτουργίας ενός τέτοιου δικτύου παραστατικών τεχνών θα μπορούσαν επί παραδείγματι να δημιουργηθούν και να λειτουργήσουν προγράμματα τα οποία θα απευθύνονται και σε ευάλωτες ομάδες, χρησιμοποιώντας την τέχνη ως μέσο έκφρασης και ενδυνάμωσης της κοινωνικής συνοχής. Ακόμα, δημιουργείται εκολαπτήριο, ένα πλαίσιο δημιουργίας ευκαιριών για τους καλλιτέχνες. Πολλοί ταλαντούχοι καλλιτέχνες στην περιοχή αντιμετωπίζουν τεράστιες δυσκολίες στην πρόσβαση σε διεθνείς αγορές ή σε κάποιο είδους χρηματοδότηση τόσο σε τοπικό όσο και σε ευρύτερο επίπεδο διεθνών χρηματοδοτήσεων. Το δίκτυο αυτό που πάμε να δημιουργήσουμε θα μπορούσε να προσφέρει το πλαίσιο για τη διεκδίκηση πόρων σε χρήματα και υλικοτεχνική υποδομή μέσα από τη συνέργεια για τη διεκδίκηση διασυναριακών προγραμμάτων στήριξης τύπου ΕΣΠΑ, όπως το Interreg ή το Creative Europe που ανέφερε και ο προλαλήσας, για την υποστήριξη και ευκαιρίες για συνεργασίες, βοηθώντας τους καλλιτέχνες να αναπτυχθούν και να προβληθούν. Επίσης, η ενίσχυση της ανάδειξης των βαλκανικών γλωσσών, το δίλημμα που σας ανέφερα στην αρχή της ομιλίας μου, μέσα από την παραγωγή και την υλοποίηση εκτός των συνεδρίων και έργων ρεπερτορίου, παλαιότερου και σύγχρονου, κάθε χώρας της Βαλκανικής, με προγράμματα ταυτόχρονης μετάφρασης, με στόχο την ουσιαστικότερη γνωριμία των βαλκανικών λαών μεταξύ τους. Ενίσχυση επίσης του πολιτιστικού τουρισμού, ακόμα ένα πεδίο το οποίο θα μπορούσε να ωφεληθεί με τη δημιουργία ενός τέτοιου δικτύου. Θα μπορούσε να δημιουργηθούν πολιτιστικοί ταξιδιώτες, ενισχύοντας την τοπική κουλτούρα, την τοπική οικονομία και τη γενικότερη εικόνα της εκάστοτε ωφελούμενης από τη συμμετοχή στο δίκτυο περιοχής. Το τουριστικό ενδιαφέρον που ήδη υπάρχει λόγω της φυσικής ομορφιάς και της ιστορίας της περιοχής των Βαλκανίων θα μπορούσε να ενισχυθεί μέσα από την ίδρυση ενός τέτοιου δικτύου. Σαφώς όμως σε ένα τέτοιο εγχείρημα, όπως αναφέρθηκε προηγουμένως, δεν μπορεί να μην υπάρχουν και πιθανές δυσκολίες σε διάφορους τομείς, με πρώτο αυτό που όλοι γνωρίζουμε καλά, τον οικονομικό τομέα και τις όποιες οικονομικές προκλήσεις προκύπτουν από την πιθανή δημιουργία του. Αρκετές από όλες μας τις βαλκανικές χώρες αντιμετωπίζουν οικονομικές δυσκολίες, οι οποίες οδηγούν αναπόφευκτα σε μια πολιτιστική πολιτική, η οποία ασκείται με περιορισμένους πόρους για το σύνολο των πολιτιστικών δραστηριοτήτων. Η ίδρυση λοιπόν ενός
τέτοιου δικτύου και περισσότερο η συντήρησή του απαιτεί μια σημαντική και συνεχή περιοδική χρηματοδότηση που πιθανότατα να μην είναι διαθέσιμη σε κάποιες από τις πιθανές χώρες μέλη του εν λόγω επί συζήτηση για ίδρυση δικτύου. Η αποφασιστική παρέμβαση και η εκ των έσω χρηματοδότηση ενός τέτοιου εγχειρήματος κρίνεται απαραίτητη ακόμα και στην περίπτωση άλλων πηγών ή την ανέβρεση πόρων όπως τα οποιαδήποτε χρηματοδοτικά προγράμματα και τις πιθανές χορηγίες, τις δωρεές, καθώς και τα πιθανά ίδια έσοδα. Κρίσιμο επίσης θεωρείται το πεδίο των πιθανών πολιτικών συνθήκων και οι πιθανές αντιθέσεις, η κοινωνικοπολιτική πραγματικότητα της εκάστοτε πιθανής χώρας μέλους. Η συγκεκριμένη περιοχή διέπεται από μια πολύπλοκη πολιτική ιστορία με εντάσεις, συγκρούσεις τόσο στο μακρινό όσο και στο πιο πρόσφατο παρελθόν. Οι πολιτικές διαφορές μεταξύ των χωρών θα μπορούσαν να δημιουργήσουν πιθανά εμπόδια τόσο στη συνεργασία όσο και στις υπόλοιπες διαδικασίες και κατ' επέκταση στην τελική εφαρμογή, πρακτική εφαρμογή ενός τέτοιου έργου. Ένα ακόμη σημείο πιθανού κολλήματος αποτελεί η λογοτεχνική και πολιτιστική ανισότητα μεταξύ των γειτονικών χωρών. Οι χώρες των Βαλκανίων έχουν διαφορετικό επίπεδο πολιτιστικής ανάπτυξης σε σχέση με την καλλιτεχνική δραστηριότητα, την πολιτιστική πολιτική, καθώς και τα σχετικά με το υπόβαθρο σε επίπεδο πολιτιστικών υποδομών σε όλους τους τομείς. Ορισμένες χώρες περτερούν σε κάποιους από τους παραπάνω τομείς με καλύτερες υποδομές, περισσότερες ευκαιρίες και θετικότερη αντιμετώπιση σε σχέση με την πολιτιστική ατζέντα και την πολιτική αντιμετώπιση του συνόλου του πολιτιστικού πεδίου, ενώ άλλες με διαφορετική πολιτική αντιμετώπιση ενδέχεται να μην είναι σε θέση να συμβάλλουν ισότιμα στη δημιουργία ενός τέτοιου δικτύου, δημιουργώντας ανισότητες μεταξύ των πιθανών εταίρων. Σε όλα τα παραπάνω, σημαντικό ρόλο επίσης διαδραματίζουν οι διαφορετικές πολιτισμικές και πολιτιστικές προτεραιότητες. Δεν υπάρχει καμία βεβαιότητα ότι όλες οι χώρες θα δώσουν την ίδια προτεραιότητα σε μια δράση που θα αφορά στις παραστατικές τέχνες και στη δημιουργία ενός πολυεθνούς δικτύου για την ανάπτυξη και την ανταλλαγή των πολιτιστικών στοιχείων που άπτονται του συγκεκριμένου πεδίου. Ορισμένες πιθανότατα επικεντρώνονται σε άλλους τομείς, όπως η οικονομική ανάπτυξη ή η εκπαίδευση, επιζητώντας την αναβάθμιση σε διαφορετικούς τομείς, αναλόγως των προτεραιοτήτων και των επιταγών της εκάστοτε πολιτικής συγκυρίας και της ιστορικής συγκυρίας, μειώνοντας έτσι τις πιθανότητες δέσμευσης πόρων και ενέργειας για ένα τέτοιο εγχείρημα. Στις πιθανές ακόμη επιπτώσεις του αναφερόμενου project, αρνητικές, θα μπορούσε να προσθεθεί και ο κίνδυνος, ο οποίος ελοχεύει για αμετροεπή εμπορευματοποίηση της τέχνης και συγκεκριμένα των παραγόμενων δράσεων στο πλαίσιο της λειτουργίας ενός τέτοιου δικτύου. Ο κίνδυνος να εμπορευματοποιηθεί η τέχνη με την έμφαση των συμμετεχόντων να δίνεται περισσότερο στην οικονομική κερδοφορία παρά στην καλλιτεχνική αξία είναι πάντα παρόν. Επίσης, σε περίπτωση που μια τέτοια πιθανότητα εξελισσόταν σε υπαρκτή συνθήκη, θα ήταν ικανή να υπονομεύσει την αυθεντικότητα και την ποιότητα των έργων, αλλά και των προθέσεων των συμμετεχόντων σε ατομικό, συλλογικό και εθνικό επίπεδο. Πάντως, παρά τις όποιες θετικές και αρνητικές επιπτώσεις, η ίδρυση ενός τέτοιου δικτύου στα Βαλκάνια έχει τη δυναμική να αποτελέσει ένα σημαντικό εργαλείο για την προώθηση της πολιτιστικής κληρονομιάς, την ενίσχυση της οικονομίας και της κοινωνικής συνοχής. Η πραγματοποίησή του απαιτεί μια στρατηγική προσέγγιση, η οποία θα λαμβάνει υπόψη την πολιτισμική, οικονομική και πολιτική σύγχρονη πραγματικότητα της ευρύτερης περιοχής. Η Θεσσαλονίκη, ως μία από τις μεγαλύτερες και πολιτισμικά σημαντικές πόλεις της περιοχής, θα μπορούσε δυνητικά να αποτελέσει το ιδανικό επίκεντρο για μια τέτοια δράση. Παρακάτω εξετάζονται ορισμένοι προτινόμενοι τρόποι υλοποίησης, καθώς και οι λόγοι για τους οποίους η Θεσσαλονίκη θα μπορούσε να αποτελέσει την ιδανική για την περίπτωση επιλογή ως έδρα ή ως κεντρικός άξονας της συγκεκριμένης δράσης. Η Θεσσαλονίκη, συνοψίζοντας, θα μπορούσαμε να πούμε και να εστιάσουμε στους πιο ουσιαστικούς λόγους για τους οποίους θα μπορούσε δυνητικά να είναι το επίκεντρο. Ο πρώτος είναι η ιστορική, πολιτική και πολιτισμική σημασία της πόλης για την ευρύτερη περιοχή της Βαλκανικής Χερσονήσου. Η ιστορική και πολιτιστική κληρονομιά, η οποία την καθιέρωσε ως μία από τις σημαντικές πόλεις της Βυζαντινής Αυτοκρατορίας και κέντρο του ελληνισμού, διαδραματίζοντας καταλυτικό ρόλο στην πολιτιστική ζωή της περιοχής, είναι μία από αυτές. Επιπλέον, έχει μια ισχυρή παράδοση στις παραστατικές τέχνες, κυρίως με το Κρατικό Θέατρο Βορείου Ελλάδος και την πλουραλιστική του παραγωγή, τα υπόλοιπα ιδιωτικά θέατρα, το Μέγαρο Μουσικής, τις ομάδες χορού και την παράδοση στο χορό, η οποία κορυφώθηκε με το αέναο χοροθέατρο του Ντανιέλ Λομέλ και αργότερα με την ανάληψη του χοροθεάτρου της πόλης από τον Κωνσταντίνο Ρίγο, που σήμερα διατελεί καλλιτεχνικός διευθυντής στην πειραματική σκηνή της εθνικής μας λυρικής σκηνής. Ένας άλλος σημαντικός λόγος είναι η προνομιακή γεωγραφική της θέση. Βρίσκεται στο κέντρο των Βαλκανίων με εύκολη πρόσβαση σε όλες και από όλες τις γύρω χώρες. Αυτή η κεντρική θέση την καθιστά επίσης ιδανικό σημείο συνάντησης και ανταλλαγής για καλλιτέχνες και φορείς στο πλαίσιο της λειτουργίας ενός τέτοιου δικτύου. Επίσης, η πόλη διαθέτει μια πολυπολιτισμική ταυτότητα με επιρροές από τον ελληνισμό, τον οθωμανικό πολιτισμό, τον εβραϊκό πολιτισμό και άλλες κουλτούρες και πολιτισμικές οντότητες, οι οποίες διαμόρφωσαν αυτό το ιδιαίτερο παλίμψιστο του χαρακτήρα της. Αυτή η ποικιλομορφία την καθιστά επίσης ιδανικό χώρο για έναν διαπολιτισμικό διάλογο και για την καλλιτεχνική έκφραση σε όλους τους τομείς του πεδίου των παραστατικών τεχνών. Επίσης, διαθέτει έναν ικανό αριθμό υφιστάμενων πολιτιστικών υποδομών που ανήκουν κυρίως στους προαναφερθέντες πολιτιστικούς φορείς, αλλά και πληθώρα έτερων υποδομών, όπως μεγάλα ανοιχτά και κλειστά θέατρα, τις υποδομές του Δήμου Θεσσαλονίκης και των όμορων δήμων, υφιστάμενες δομές οι οποίες κληρονομήθηκαν από την περίοδο της διεξαγωγής των Ολυμπιακών Αγώνων, δυνητικά αξιοποιήσιμους πολιτιστικά αρχαιολογικούς χώρους, μουσεία και άλλα. Επίσης, διαθέτει μια σημαντική πόλη, μια σημαντική ακαδημαϊκή και καλλιτεχνική κοινότητα, ούσα έδρα μεγάλων πανεπιστημίων και σημαντικών καλλιτεχνικών σχολών, προσφέροντας ένα δυναμικό ακαδημαϊκό και καλλιτεχνικό πλαίσιο, στο οποίο θα μπορούσε να στηρίξει ουσιαστικά το έργο ενός τέτοιου δικτύου. Τέλος, υπάρχει και η διόλου αμεληταία συμβολική σημασία της ηγετικής θέσης της πόλης σε κεντρικό ρόλο στη λειτουργία του δικτύου, η οποία την καθιστά ιδανική επιλογή. Ως μια πόλη που έχει υπάρξει γέφυρα μεταξύ Ανατολής και Δύσης, όπως και ο κύριος Λιμπεράτος ανέλησε προηγουμένως επισταμένος, προσδίδει μια ουσιαστική συμβολική νότα σε μια πρωτοβουλία που στοχεύει και αφορά στην ενίσχυση της πολιτιστικής ενότητας και συνεργασίας μεταξύ των χωρών της περιοχής, πρωτοστατώντας για μία ακόμη φορά στη δημιουργία μιας πολιτιστικής και πολιτισμικής γέφυρας που θα συμβάλλει στην αρμονική συνύπαρξη, την καλή γειτονία, την ειρήνη και την ανάπτυξη σε όλους τους τομείς της ευρύτερης πολύπαθης περιοχής. Ας περάσουμε τώρα στους τρόπους με τους οποίους θα μπορούσε να υλοποιηθεί ένα τέτοιο εγχείρημα. Η πρακτική πραγματοποίηση θα μπορούσε, για παράδειγμα, να επιτευχθεί μέσω της δημιουργίας ενός χρηματοδοτούμενου συνεταιριστικού φορέα. Τα περισσότερα τα ανέφερε ήδη ο κ. Μαρκαντονάτος, με τον οποίο έχουμε και κοινές απόψεις και κοινή αντίληψη του θέματος. Ο εν λόγω φορέας, λοιπόν, θα μπορούσε να δημιουργηθεί με μια συνεταιριστική προσέγγιση, με τη συμμετοχή κρατικών και μη κρατικών φορέων, πολιτιστικών οργανισμών, εκπαιδευτικών ιδρυμάτων και την αρρωγή φυσικά των πολιτικών δυνάμεων, των θεσμών από τις ενδιαφερόμενες χώρες της περιοχής των Βαλκανίων και την οικονομική συμμετοχή, καθώς και την υποστήριξη σε υλικοτεχνική υποδομή, η οποία θα μπορούσε να επιμεριστεί στο σύνολο των χωρών μελών και να λειτουργεί με τη μέθοδο του rotation, σύμφωνα με τις δυνατότητες τις οποίες διαθέτει η κάθε μία από τις χώρες μέλη. Μια τέτοια συνεργασία θα μπορούσε να υποστηριχθεί και να είναι βιώσιμη μόνο μέσα σε ένα υποστηριζόμενο θεσμικά πλαίσιο, με τη στήριξη των υφισταμένων πολιτικών και κοινωνικών δυνάμεων και μέσα από μια σειρά πολιτιστικών πρακτικών και πρωτοβουλειών, με την προοπτική της επέκτασης και του εμπλουτισμού της με νέες δράσεις και πρακτικές, οι οποίες θα ενίσχυαν το ρόλο της στη συνολική δημιουργία πολιτιστικής ανάπτυξης στην ευρύτερη περιοχή, χωρίς να χαθεί η μοναδικότητα, η ιδιαιτερότητα, η ταυτότητα της εκάστοτε υπάρχουσας κουλτούρας. Μία από τις πιο ασφαλείς και πιθανότητα περισσότερο βιώσιμες μελλοντικά πρακτικές είναι η συνεχής χρηματοδότηση από τα διεθνή ευρωπαϊκά προγράμματα, και μία τέτοια πηγή χρηματοδότησης, όπως είπαμε, θα μπορούσε δυνητικά να επέλθει από τα ήδη αναφερθέντα αυτά προγράμματα, Interreg, Creative Europe κλπ. Επίσης, θα μπορούσαν να συμβάλλουν ιδιωτικοί χορηγοί, πιθανοί δωρητές, από ιδρύματα, ιδιώτες, να πραγματοποιηθούν ενέργειες για συλλογή πόρων μέσω grab funding, μια πολύ νέα και πολύ χρησιμοποιούμενη πρακτική, καθώς και μη κερδοσκοπικοί οργανισμοί, οι οποίοι δραστηριοποιούνται στον τομέα του πολιτισμού και της διεθνούς κοινωνικής συνοχής. Σημαντική επίσης ενέργεια για τη βιωσιμότητα ενός τέτοιου εγχειρήματος θα μπορούσε να αποτελέσει η δημιουργία πολιτιστικών κέντρων και χώρων με συνεχή λειτουργία σε διάφορες πόλεις των Βαλκανίων, με τη Θεσσαλονίκη πιθανότατα να λειτουργεί ως κεντρικός κόμβος. Αυτά τα κέντρα θα μπορούσαν να φιλοξενούν παραστάσεις, εκθέσεις, εργαστήρια και εκπαιδευτικά προγράμματα σε όλη τη διάρκεια του έτους και θα μπορούσαν να βοηθήσουν στη συλλογή οικονομικών πόρων από εισιτήρια, συντήρηση και διατήρηση στις συνεχούς δράσεις και να συντηρήσουν την επαφή και τις συνεχείς ανταλλαγές σε μικρότερη κλίμακα. Για την ολιστικότερη και μέσω της θεωρίας προσέγγιση θα μπορούσαν να δημιουργηθούν και κάποιου είδους ημερίδες και διημερίδες, και με τη διοργάνωση σε σταθερή βάση ενός φεστιβάλ στο πλαίσιο του δικτύου με έδρα τη Θεσσαλονίκη και εναλλαγή με την λογική του rotation, όπως υπόθηκε, σε διαφορετική κάθε φορά χώρα μέλος του δικτύου, θα μπορούσε να ενισχυθεί ο θεσμός, να προσελκύσει καλλιτέχνες και θεατές από την ευρύτερη περιοχή, αλλά και το εξωτερικό, καθιστώντας τις δράσεις του δικτύου ένα διεθνές σημαντικό γεγονός, μια πράξη για την επίτευξη μιας ουσιαστικής παγκοσμιοποίησης του πολιτισμού. Βοηθητική επίσης θα μπορούσε να αποδειχθεί η δημιουργία της πλατφόρμας της ψηφιακής που θα ενίσχυε την επικοινωνία και τη συνεργασία μεταξύ καλλιτεχνών και οργανισμών ή των συμμετεχόντων των φορέων. Η πλατφόρμα αυτή θα μπορούσε να περιλαμβάνει ψηφιακές εκθέσεις, διαδικτυακά εργαστήρια, παρουσίαση και διαφήμιση των δράσεων και των εκδηλώσεων, καθώς και μία βάση δεδομένων για τη συνολική δράση του μελλοντικού αυτού δικτύου, τους καλλιτέχνες, την ανάδειξη των καλλιτεχνικών δυνάμεων της κάθε χώρας, οι οποίες θα μπορούσαν να αποτελέσουν μελλοντικούς συνεργάτες του δικτύου και άλλες σημαντικές λειτουργίες. Συμπερασματικά, η δημιουργία ενός διαβαλκανικού δικτύου με έδρα τη Θεσσαλονίκη θα μπορούσε να αποτελέσει μια πρωτοβουλία για την ενίσχυση της πολιτιστικής ταυτότητας της περιοχής, να προωθήσει τον διαπολιτισμικό διάλογο και να δημιουργήσει νέες ευκαιρίες για καλλιτέχνες, φορείς και κοινότητες. Και πιστεύω ότι με τη σωστή συνεργασία και υποστήριξη η δράση αυτή θα μπορούσε να αποτελέσει μια σημαντική πολιτισμική κινητήριο δύναμη για το σύνολο της νοτιοανατολικής Ευρώπης και πιο συγκεκριμένα για τη γειτονιά μας, τα Βαλκάνια. Σας ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Dear friends, dear ladies and gentlemen, everyone who is still present here and those who have left, and also the president of the National Organization of Cyprus who is here with us. Because apart from the Balkans, this whole thing concerns also the Eastern Europe and also not only the countries that are in the Mediterranean, but also in this particular part of Europe. We should consider a potential collaboration with everyone in the future. My speech is about the necessity of the creation of an inter-Balkan network of performing arts and the way to proceed it. So your proposals also will be taken into consideration in order to create such a network. And this network has as a final objective the creation of a festival that will influence both sides. The creation of a network of performing arts in the region of the Balkans, which mostly concerns the Southeastern Europe, is a potential that seems to be a necessity for the creation of the preservation of good relations and the constructive exchange of cultural elements. Also, with the further development in this area, so this area does not stay behind from all these developments occurred with a systematic operation of the European Union, both in economic, social, and political level. The region of the Balkans, with its very rich cultural heritage and the very intense multiculturalism as characteristics of its historic itinerary, but also with the economic and political challenges that this area faces, have been culminated in the previous century, but also in our century. And all of these constitutes a very interesting region from all aspects. With all these connections and the changes that have occurred in political, but also alternations in the governance systems, all these changes and all these events, they have occurred, they have, as a result, in our everyday life and in our modus vivendi, they have transformed it. And through that, there is a new reality of the Balkan regions that hasn't been unnoticed in the history of the global community. The composition of such a cultural network in this region shows that it is a necessity that shows substantial at the moment, but it is necessary for the development in the area of culture in order to have a complete and unified Balkan cultural development. But the creation of such a network, as necessary, as we have already mentioned, it has both positive and negative aspects. In the negative aspects, we could say that it's the cultural heritage and the variety of these cultural elements we have already mentioned. The wide area of the Balkans is characterized by a very rich cultural heritage, which includes the music, dance, the visual arts, and also every kind of arts and practices. The foundation of such a network of performing arts, it can enhance the promotion of this heritage and also promote the artistic exchange, even lead to the creation of a platform which can contribute drastically to the preservation of innovation in the broad area of arts and in particular performing arts. The intercultural dialogue and the collaboration is another positive aspect. As we have already mentioned, the multiculturalism, it's one of the basic characteristics of the history of this region. We have populations that are part of different ethnicities, different religions, different language groups, and the creation of such a network can also serve as a bridge for an intercultural dialogue, a dialogue which promotes the notions and practices for a better understanding and for a preservation of peace in the area of the Balkans. This preservation, which must be characterized by humanist standards, and the benefits of these practices will influence also through the art. Moreover, the enhancement of the social cohesion is another positive aspect from this creation. The art has already been proved that it is a very powerful tool for the enhancement of social cohesion and the dealing with those social problems such as unemployment and social exclusion. In the context of the functioning of such a network of performing arts, this could serve as an example to create and operate particular programs that would be addressed to vulnerable groups that will use the art as a means of expression and empowerment and dealing with the social exclusion as a means of the social cohesion and the integration of these groups to these broader programs and actions. This will lead to the conflict resolutions with all the rest of the social groups. It also creates opportunities for the artist. There are many talented artists in the region that face difficulties regarding the access in the international markets, but also they face problems with funding, both in local level, but also international level. Such a network would offer the context in which they could claim resources for the infrastructure and the collaboration in order to create programs, cross-border programs, also with the aid of these programs, such as the National Strategic Reference Framework, such as Interreg and Creative Europe, as already mentioned in the previous speech, for the education, the support, and all the chances for collaboration, helping all these artists to promote themselves and develop themselves. Promoting this also Balkan languages could be a very positive result. The production and implementation of projects, older and modern, from every country of the Balkans through programs of simultaneous interpretation can have as an objective the most meaningful contact between the Balkan countries, enhancing also the cultural tourism. The creation of such a network can attract also cultural travelers, tourists, by enhancing the local culture, the local economy, and generally the impression we have from the participation in such a network. The Balkan Peninsula has attracts many tourists because of its natural beauty and the history. And the creation of a network for performing arts with all these potential actions and the festivals that we have already mentioned that might be created, these can all work and operate in the context of collaboration and exchange from both the participating bodies, but also the autonomous artistic entities who can potentially also contribute to this attracting cultural tourism of the region. Also, such an initiative, it has to be, we have to admit that there are also very possible difficulties for that. The most important is the economic factor, as the economic challenges in many of the countries of the region, the Balkan countries, are a lot in this particular moment. And these problems, the economic problems, can lead to a specific cultural policy, having as a result the limited funds for all the cultural activities of the region. The creation, and most important, the preservation of such a network, it can be a very important step. We have to point out that the most important thing is not only the funding, but the continuous funding of such a project, which sometimes it might not be a viable solution in the countries of this particular network. The decisive intervention and also the funding of such a venture is considered to be necessary. We have to find these funding and resources from the funding programs, possible sponsorship, and also donations, as well as possible income. It is also very crucial in the field of the political conditions and the political conflicts of the region. This particular region, the Balkans, is characterized by a very complex political history, a history with tensions and conflicts, not only in the past, but also in our recent past. The political differences between these countries can create possible barriers also to this collaboration and to all the equivalent procedures that will derive from the implementation of such a project. Another possible problem would be the literature and the cultural inequalities that characterize the neighboring countries. The countries of the Balkans have different levels of the cultural development in relation to their artistic activity, and this level of cultural infrastructure in many of the fields. Many countries, some of these countries have better infrastructure. They can provide more opportunities, and they have a more positive dealing with all these cultural and political agenda compared to other countries where the different political dealing in this field might cause many problems, and this can lead to an inequality regarding the creation of such a network and an inequality between the partners involved. To all the things that we have already mentioned, we must add also the differences in the cultural priorities of every country. There is no possibility all these countries can prioritize the same way all the actions we are talking about, the performing arts and the creation of a multinational network for the development and also the exchange of these cultural elements in this particular field. Sometimes they are more focused in their economical development and the upgrading in different fields, depending on the priorities they have already set. And this, as a result, leads to the decrease of the resources and the energy for such a venture. In these possible negative consequences we have already talked about, we have to add also the danger from the uncontrolled commercialization of art, and in particular of these particular initiatives in the context of the operation of such a network. There is always a very evident, a danger in these cases about the art that might be commercialized, and there might be participants who would be more interested in paying attention to the profit instead of the artistic value of such a venture. In that case, we have, in that case, this has as a result to diminish the authenticity and the quality of the work we're trying to do, and also the incentives of the participants, both in individual but also national level. Apart from all the negative and the positive consequences, the creation of a network for performing arts in the Balkans has the dynamic to be considered as an important tool for the promotion of the cultural heritage, the enhancement of economy, and also the promotion of social cohesion. Nevertheless, the economic, political, and cultural challenges of this region, they demand a very careful planning and a very creative, continuous collaboration between all the parties involved and all the political powers. And if there is the appropriate support and the commitment from everyone, then this could work as a very important and a major pillar for the cultural development in Southeastern Europe, that is our neighborhood, Balkans. The realization of such a project demands a very strategic procedure, which will take into consideration also the cultural, economic, and political reality of the broader area. Thessaloniki, as one of the most important and culturally important cities of the region, it can be potentially the center of such an action. We will examine just after all the proposed ways for the implementation of such a project, and also the ways for which Thessaloniki could indeed become the ideal city as a seat or as a central axe for this particular action.
There are many reasons why Thessaloniki could be serving as a point of reference, and I'll be mentioning the most important ones. The first of all is the fact that the city is really important in terms of its history and cultural importance for the Balkans. It has a rich cultural and historical legacy, which made the city one of the most important ones in the Byzantine Empire, and also an important center of Hellenism. Also, Thessaloniki has a long tradition of performing arts, more specifically with the National Theatre of Northern Greece, and its pluralist production, private theatres, concert halls, dance groups. For example, there is a particular one called the Aeneon Dance Theatre, directed by Daniel Lommel and then by Konstantinos Rigos, who is today the artistic director of the experimental stage of the Great National Opera. Another reason is the location of the city. Thessaloniki is at the center of the Balkans, providing easy access to the surrounding countries. So its location makes it the perfect meeting point for artists and cultural bodies from all over the world. Another reason that makes Thessaloniki ideal is the fact that it has a vibrant multicultural and social framework. It has its own multicultural identity influenced by Hellenism, by the Ottoman civilization, by the Hebrew civilization, and other cultures which have influenced its character. So this makes it the perfect place for intercultural dialogue. It also has the necessary cultural infrastructure that belong to certain bodies, and also some theaters belonging to the municipality of Thessaloniki and other municipalities, which all create the urban landscape of the city. This infrastructure was created particularly during the Olympic Games, and there are also more spaces, for example, archaeological sites and museums. The city also has a powerful scholar and artistic community. It holds many universities, many art schools, which offer the necessary scholar and artistic framework that can support the creation of such a network. Last but not least, we shouldn't forget the leadership potential of the city. It is a city that bridges east and west and adds a symbolic note to that. This Thessaloniki could act as a means to reinforce the cultural unity and collaboration among the neighboring countries of the region, and could also be a cultural bridge that will reinforce the harmonic coexistence of all those countries, would reinforce peace and development in different sectors. There are many ways in which all that could be realized, but they all require collaboration and comprehensive communication among partners. So in order to realize it, we need to create a funded cooperative body, as Mr. Markadonatos has mentioned in his speech, so I won't be mentioning too many details. This will be supported by governmental and non-governmental bodies, cultural bodies, and this would also require the support of political powers. Apart from the money and resources, this requires the necessary infrastructure and could work with a rotating model according to the capacities of each country. Such a collaboration also requires the necessary legal framework that will support it. This will lead to the creation of a homogeneous cultural identity without, however, renouncing the uniqueness and particularities of each culture. One viable practice would be the continuous funding by European and international programs that would reinforce the collaboration among countries. That could be, for example, European programs such as Creative Europe and the Interreg, which specifies in the Balkan region, and also funding by international organizations related to cultural growth. Some private donors could also contribute to that, donations from foundations, and we could also use grant funding, which is really popular nowadays. Also, the creation of cultural centers that will operate continuously in different cities of the Balkans is really important. Thessaloniki could be the center of that, could be acting as a central hub. So those centers could be hosting performances, exhibitions, workshops, educational programs throughout the year, through which we will collect money and will maintain all the places mentioned. We could also organize an annual festival or a festival every 2 years, where all of these will be presented. We could be having conferences, meetings, in order to better explore all that. So such a festival could be organized in Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki could be the seat, and then we would rotate throughout different cities. What we deem necessary is also the creation of a digital platform which would reinforce the communication and collaboration among artists and bodies and all the participants involved. So this platform could have some digital expositions, workshops, and presentations, which would only help artists and people come together. In conclusion, creating an inter-Balkan network on performing arts located in Thessaloniki could be an initiative aiming at reinforcing the cultural identity of the area, promoting intercultural dialogue and creating new opportunities for artists, bodies, and communities. With the right amount of support and collaboration, this initiative could become the motor for the Southern Eastern Europe and more specifically for our neighborhood, the Balkans. Thank you.
We're done with the English edition. I welcome you all to our track first, session 1, on Balkans and performing arts, theory and practice. I'm the moderator for this track, for this session. Professor Emeritus Savas Patsalidis of the University of Thessaloniki was unable to join us, but he was kind enough to videotape his speech. I think we can upload it and watch his speech. His paper is on the inevitability of change, and we are looking forward to hearing from Savas what he has to say about change in performing arts.
Dear friends and colleagues, as I look at the program that has been shaped, I truly regret not being able to join you for this first and very important meeting. Unfortunately, coincided with a prior commitment I made some time ago. And I really hope to see you in person next time. The world is changing. You might say that it has always been changing, but never before at such a dizzying pace. And this compels us to move accordingly, to become part of the changes that are coming, changes that wait for no one. Now, more than ever, the word connect carries significant weight. Our era is so diverse that it demands alliances, partnerships, collaborations, and cooperation. We are called to find practical ways to connect, convene, co-create, and engage, moving beyond isolated national identities. We must think together about ways the theater can resist the harsh realities of neoliberalism and its economic model, and the cold logic of the technocrats and number crunchers. It is time to reflect more systematically on the role of theater within its community and the relationships among the other communities. That means to reflect on what constitutes a Balkan community. What are its values? Who are its residents? To reflect on questions like, is homogeneity a prerequisite for community existence? If not, what does heterogeneity mean? In a heterogeneous community, is there a sense of belonging or not? Are moral relationships necessary for the existence of the community? These are, among others, some of the pressing issues that are particularly relevant to our region, all difficult and perplexing, yet all hiding valuable and exploitable resources that could serve as excellent material for our theaters to create a unique and significant art around common axis of reflection, bringing us closer together in an open and constructive dialogue. I emphasize this point because although we are neighbors, we know very little about each other. We tend to study other communities and draw inspiration from the great theatrical reservoir of Europe, bypassing the theatrical reality of our own region, a reality that is historically and ethnologically fascinating and fertile. We are a neighborhood where similarities far outweigh our differences, yet differences can also provide fertile ground for reflection, contemplation, and creativity. Woe betide us if theater sought only similarities. That would be quite dull. Differences are fertilizer for thought and creation. In this sweeping age, where everyone is forming alliances and collaborations, we have yet to cultivate a productive network of interactions and partnerships. We proceed in ignorance of one another. Thus, here is a fundamental challenge to redefine our relationship with our broader geographical neighborhood. We need to find a common platform for reflection, discussion, exchange, co-creation, and gathering. A platform that, through its works and proposals, addresses all communities, showing that it really cares for them. Certainly, what lies ahead will not be easy. This is why a creative collaboration is required so that all our community leaderships, relevant ministries, and key funders are convinced to embrace it. To achieve this, we must demonstrate through our programs, goals, and our scientific research and artistic deliverables that collaboration among the theaters in the region and their communities should not be viewed as an option, but as a necessity. Everyone must understand that European theater is not solely the theater of northern countries. There are exciting artistic qualities in our region, just as there are untapped, precious historical, social, and other resources beneath the surface of Southern Europe, which such an initiative as ours could utilize, providing significant social and artistic contributions to the peoples of the region, while simultaneously enhancing international visibility. For all this to become reality, I believe we must coordinate immediately so that what is discussed in this meeting has practical continuity. The era of centripetal leaderships has passed. The multicultural makeup of modern societies requires more adaptable artistic teams and leaderships. From a singular control perspective, we seem to need the many who shape. We must move from power dynamics to empowering participation. We must move from individual vision to the shared vision of the members. We must move from discussion to dialogue. We must move from sharing information to creating knowledge. We must move from taking to contemplating. We must move from goals to core values and vision. We must move from the perspective that change begins from the top to the idea that change can start from anywhere. We must move from an exclusive either/or mindset to an inclusive and postmodern both/and approach. And one more thing, management is different from leadership. Management involves planning, resource control, and organization aimed at achieving a goal. While this is necessary, I would suggest that at this stage, a mixed committee of theorists and practitioners, leaders and managers from the theater be formed to develop an initial draft of a program, goals and means of achieving them, and perhaps a first trial festival. In closing, I wish for the discussions of this first meeting to yield fruitful results. I think that was an important first move, and if we all support each other creatively, I'm sure we will achieve great things in the years to come. Thank you very much, and goodbye from far away. Goodbye.
We'd like to thank Professor Patsalidis for emphasizing and underscoring that through differences we can find a mutual code of communication between all Balkan countries. Our next speaker is Professor Emerita Stamatopoulou Vasilakou from the University of Athens. Professor Vasilakou was unable to join us in person, so I invite Professor Emerita Varvara Georgopoulou from the University of the Peloponnese to read out her speech, her paper on the presence of Greek theater in the Balkans. Thank you, Barbara.
Mr. President, esteemed members of the organizing committee for the first Interbalkan Conference, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome the opening of the first Interbalkan Conference for the creation of our Interbalkan network of performing arts. I wish that the foundation of its desired objectives for the artistic osmosis of the peoples of the Balkan Peninsula in the field of performing arts be successfully led. Theatre, and more broadly the performing arts, serve not only as therapeutic means of individual as well as collective psychological support, uplifting the human spirit and fostering higher emotion, but also as a vehicle for a self-awareness among peoples and to mutual understanding. Today, having resolved the issue of linguistic communication thanks to the means of modern technology, theatre contributes to the understanding of cultural otherness by highlighting the common elements that connect peoples. This helps to smooth over old historical differences, hostility among nations through the common cause of artistic creation. We do not forget the four historical facts that connect the history of modern Greek theatre with the Balkan countries. A. The first appearance of modern Greek theatre in the Danubian principalities on the eve of Greek independence. B. The fact that the first modern Greek drama from the 17th century is made up of the clerical and secular satires of the Phaneroids found during the period in Istanbul and Bucharest. Additionally, the fact that the political theatre of the War of Greek independence emerges in the Danubian principalities and in Istanbul during the same period. C. The particularly fruitful period after the passage of the Hati Humayun from the mid-19th century and to continue in the 20th century, which is characterized by a remarkable mobility of Greek theatrical troupes that visited cities where there were Greek communities in the Balkan Peninsula and in Istanbul. And D. The presence of Greek theatre in the communities of Greek political refugees in Balkan countries after the end of the civil war in Greece. Based on these four historical facts, as a scholar of the history of modern Greek theatre, I would wish that the soon to be established Inter-Balkan Network of Performing Arts, beyond facilitating communication and exchange among performing arts artists, will also give a boost to the research of theatre history of Greek and the Balkan countries. The Balkan Network will help researchers by providing access to public and private archives and to special collections with the hope that new unknown elements of their theatrical history will come to light. With these thoughts in mind, I congratulate the organizer of this conference, the National Theatre of Northern Greece, and the Master's Program in Performing Arts of the Hellenic Open University for this initiative, and I wish them great success in the conference proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Emerita Varvara Georgopoulou. And we go on with our next speaker, Professor Emerita Anna Tabaki from the University of Athens. Again, we are sorry to say that Professor Tabaki wasn't able to join us today. So I invite Dr. Kosmopoulou to read out her paper, which is on a cross-study in cultural aesthetics and artistic exchanges in Southeastern Europe.
Dear distinguished academics, dear esteemed colleagues, and cherished performing artists, dear friends. The constant concern for comparison, I would like to insist, has established a long tradition aimed at studies of cultural transfers, which reciprocally influence intellectual and social life. The evolution of thought institutions, historiographical attitudes, literature and drama, the collective imagination in general. It is not possible in the brief speech to discuss that is common cultural traditions in Southeastern Europe. On this level, what might form the focus of attention of the intellectual history of Southeastern Europe would be the construction of the intellectual genealogies of the Balkan national societies that have emerged during the 19th and the 20th centuries. I should now turn to a second issue in this framework of reconsiderations. In rethinking the intellectual past of Southeastern Europe, some fundamental distinctions should be borne in mind. Leveling of problems and especially leveling of evidence is a safe recipe not only for bad scholarship, but for dishonest scholarship as well. The fundamental distinction that ought to be borne in mind in this connection is that between two varieties of source material, we must distinguish between, first, the literary and dramatic products of nationalism, which even in the pre-nation state periods do belong to national intellectual genealogies, and secondly, pre-modern literary in the case of Southeastern Europe under Ottoman rule. In this case, considerable force would have to be exercised to integrate the literary and dramatic products of these traditions into national intellectual genealogies. It was precisely this kind of ahistorical treatment that has been attempted on a large scale as part of nation-building projects in all Balkan national societies. For a comparative reconsideration of aesthetic, literary, and dramatic currents, we have a long and very fertile line of translated texts. I'm referring to both edited texts and manuscripts that have reciprocally fertilized our cultures belonging to many spheres of knowledge. The coexistence of manuscript and printed matter is always a case to remember because both were able to satisfy the needs of a determined circuit of scholars almost equally. On the other hand, speaking of the 18th and 19th centuries, familiarity with new genres, texts, and ideas, alignment with the renewed phases of Western culture was developed through the parallel process, manuscript, printed book. The impact of certain aesthetic dispositions, such as the Baroque, pre-Romantism, neoclassicism, or more precisely, of centered genres, such as the sentimental novel, the picaresque, etc., occurs almost exclusively through translations. As for the great Western movements, if we go back a little, we note that modern Hellenism did not directly receive the breath of the Italian Renaissance and the Baroque in aesthetics until relatively late in the middle of the 17th century. The phenomenon found its roots in a cultural area peripheral to the central body of Greece, notably Venetian Crete. From there, it subsequently radiated to some centers of Italian influence, notably in the Ionian Islands. It is a production with a preponderance in literature and drama. Furthermore, it is in the same cultural space that we encounter the presence of the spirit of the Counter-Reformation, expressed above all by Jesuit theater. Such is the example of the play Zeno, written towards the end of the 17th century in Zakynthos or Cephalonia, by an Islander Cretan or Heptanesian imitation of a tragedy written in Latin by the English Jesuit Jove Simons, bearing the same title, Zeno, published in 1648.
However, I wonder whether such a prolific movement, which found many artistic expressions, should not be studied in comparison with similar cultural manifestations that developed in other regions of Southeastern Europe, either under the direct patronage of the Renaissance, such as Dalmatia, or under other tutelages. So we have before our eyes a map with the darker sides having assimilated the concept of the Renaissance. The same goes for the expressions of the Baroque and Rococo. Nowadays, new discoveries bring to light narrative or dramatic text, the latter highlighted by the assiduous research of Professor Walter Buchner concerning either translations or original compositions of religious themes, which testify to a clear and widespread interest in a fairly wide area, extending from Cyprus to the islands of archipelagos and the principalities. In the nursery that was the Romanian principalities of the second half of the 18th century, one can therefore find at several levels of cultural, or more precisely, poetic expression, and on many occasions the presence of pre-romantic aesthetic notions as diffuse predispositions in concert with a moral and didactic ideal stemming from the spirit of the Enlightenment. These two notions proved to be compatible. Towards the end of the century, the Romantic impulse will reinforce the liberalism of the Enlightenment. The search of sensitivity, of sentimentality, cultivated by the Phanariots, lying halfway between Oriental languor and the literary fashions of the West, was not, in my opinion, a completely isolated case. The last decades of the 18th century provide us with similar examples proving the impact of these notions. Nevertheless, at the turn of the century, we notice the predominance of French heroic neoclassicism. The tone was certainly set by Adamance Corre and his followers, who introduced the current of French ideology. I mean here the influence exerted by the group of ideologues into modern Greek intellectual life. Thus, the first decades of the 19th century will be more neoclassicist than romantic. However, apart from a few flagrant romantic exceptions, osmosis exists more or less visible or even underlined, if only at the level of the temperaments that are formed. This osmosis also contributes to the formation of the particularity of the Neo-Hellenic Enlightenment in the wider area of the Southeastern Europe. Going through the 19th century very quickly, since it is along with the 20th century, I would like to point out some similarities deriving above all from the common vision following the creation of the new states intended to establish the national character. This preponderant vision left its traces both on the cultivated literary and dramatic genres, where one can discern a great penchant for social criticism and satire, and on the translation movement, where one finds a common penchant in the Balkan cultures for adaptation to national utility. In particular, we speak of Hellenization, Bulgarization, Romanization, etc. In conclusion, let me say how much the comparative approach to the particular phenomenon that we have briefly discussed can offer a valuable tool, how much it remains indispensable to any effort to synthesize. We need solid concepts formed after intense reflection derived from a deep knowledge of the similarities and underlying diversities in each specific culture while establishing parallels. Nevertheless, we need one more meetings on the great aesthetic movements and their reception in Southeastern Europe, starting with the Renaissance and the Baroque and then extending to the Age of Enlightenment, Romanticism, Naturalism, and finally to the modernist movements up to the present day. In 1875, a Bulgarian adaptation of Molière, The Miser by Marco Balabanov, circulated in Constantinople. borrowing many of Constantine Economos' solutions. For example, he adopted Economos' enlightened vision as it results from the added scene evoking exita velonis, obscurantist, arpagon, contempt for education and schools, which places him among the opponents of the Enlightenment. Balabanov's links with Greek culture are also attested by other sources. The result, not so much of a direct influence as rather as a common and convergent atmosphere. Stayakov's one-act comedy Malakov, 1864, uses a widespread motive, the excessive of passion and the ridiculousness of its servile imitation. The play is set in Bulgarian province, and the only visible similarity with Hormuz's comedy remains the reference to the white skirt that was all the rage at this time. Is this a common point or a simple coincidence? Both authors were in Constantinople at the same time. Each wrote his play. The didactic aims of Mrs. G's work remain predominant. His only preserved portrait testifies to a sober personality and an austere appearance. However, he left us graceful comedies that were very popular at the end of the 19th century. Born in Bathi, on the island of Samos around 1826, he completed his early studies on his native island, which at the time was experiencing a cultural flourishing in the fields of literature, theater, and education. While still young, perhaps around 1855-58, he left Samos for Constantinople, probably feeling the desire to continue his studies. He taught over 45 years in various educational institutions in Constantinople and was very actively involved in the cultural activities, predominantly literary and dramatic readings or staging by amateur troupes or plays, often of circumstance, which took place in the Silog. From 1860, each district of the city boasted of having its association Silogos, working for the dissemination of education among the Greeks. Moreover, according to some testimonies, Mrs. G was among the pioneers who introduced Greek theater in the city in the years 1858-1860. His educational contribution was widely recognized. This is also due to the fact that around 1878 he was invited to Philippoupolis to reorganize the educational system in the Greek primary schools of the city. I believe we can assume that during the stay in Bulgaria, he contributed to the organization of theatrical performances in the schools. His one-act comedy, The Duke of Stupidity, which was composed in the style of an improvisational comedy, even making a vague allusion at its beginning to the Commedia dell'arte in order to be performed by students in a school setting, was perhaps written on the spot. Against the backdrop of Carnival, the students of a Greek school located in a suburb of Constantinople will invent a prank based on the motive of misunderstanding, qui provoque, to fool the supervisor Michalis, a xenomaniac and illiterate. Don Carlos, Spanish nobleman, historical figure, arrives in Constantinople and after various comic incidents awards him with a decoration. His ridicule is such that at the end of the play, after discovering the truth, Michalis seems ready to cure himself of his illusions. Despite the improvisational process, the rhythm of the comedy is fast and unrelenting. Mrs. G exploits some of the favorite techniques distinguished and his ability to imitate the sound of foreign languages, creating comic effects. Knowing the mixed ethnic character of these schools, which did not necessarily address young people of Greek origin, we can assume that among its students there were also Bulgarians. The comedy, according to the custom of the time, was printed in Philippoupolis in 1881. Among the subscribers were a good number of Bulgarians. And if we rely on the subscribers' catalogs, Mrs. G must have been known in a much wider geographical area. Among the subscribers were a good number of Bulgarians, and if we rely on the subscribers' catalog, catalogs, messages must have been known in a much wider geographical area. Although this incident does not fall within the heart of the osmosis that endowed Bulgarian culture with its first stage achievements, which occurred towards the beginning of the second half of the 19th century and primarily in the schools established by foreign communities, the latter serving as nurseries for the impact of dramatic art, it still remains eloquent. During the 19th century, during the formation of the nation states, the Balkan polymorphism is expressed in a more decisive way, while in the field of letters, we identify some converging trajectories. If in the whole of literary production, the case dramatic, we witness the elaboration of the concept of national identity, a process that presupposed above all the ideological interpretation of national history in the field of comedy, two elements form par excellence the components of homogeneous problematic that encompasses both the original production and that derive from translations, the adaptation to local customs, is τα καθημάς, and the orientation towards social and political criticism with the criticism of customs and its epicenter. The social problems seem almost identical: great mobility of social classes, creation of a state mechanism of a completely new hierarchy composed of civil servants, emergence of a large number of contradictions due to the rapid metamorphosis of a society which saw itself obliged to adopt the European way of life. In the examples discussed in this paper, we are faced with a crystallization of common behaviors from the time of the universalism of the Enlightenment represented by Piccolos to the time of emergence of the national specificities outlined in Greek and Bulgarian comedies. Many convergences are due to the similarities of the Balkan structures. Cultural transfers are visible and evident as much as the handling of certain themes and motives relevant to social realities.
Despina, thank you most warmly for helping out with Professor Tabakis' paper. Our next speaker, addressee to this conference via video, is Michael Marmarinos. He's a well-known director in this country. We're looking forward to hearing what he has to say about this conference and about the creation of this network.
Dear friends, dear participants, my name is Michail Marmarinos. Unfortunately, unexpected obligations kept me here away from you, obligations beyond my will. But by this opportunity, I would love cordially to welcome you there and cross my fingers and wish that this first Inter-Balkan meeting for performing arts will stay a tool for communication as the city or brain for the future of performing arts in Balkans. Let's hope that this will be the starting point for a close and strong interchange and communication for performing arts. Stay calm, stay happy. I wish you good work and enjoy Thessaloniki.
That was very brief, and we're running late, I'm afraid. We have to speed up the proceedings. We're going straight to the round table, so I would like to invite our participants, Professor Lukaki, Medenica, the art director of Thaltekis, the director of the drama school here, Yannis Rigas, Professor Ungovsky, Professor Vasiliev, and Professor and Director futuris. Like this?
Not mine.
We're half an hour late, so I would like to, be very brief in my introduction and give it over to the participants and speakers at this round table. I'm very honored to moderate this session. I would like to start with the remarks on the conference on the possibility of creating and establishing a network of inter-Balkan studies focused on the performing arts with Professor Lukaki. Professor Lukaki is the rector of the National University at Bucharest. So, Liviu,
yes,
I give it over to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Our first question is about the objective and scope of this endeavor. So I would like to hear your remarks on how it is possible to establish this kind of network. Is it feasible? Is it doable in your view?
Yes, it is, and I think hello everybody. Nice to be here. As it was already told you, I am the director of the National University of Theatre and Film in Bucharest, and I'm also the vice president of the National Council of Rectors in Romania. So, in also this, I would send their good remarks and wishes well for you. So yes, this is doable, and our university and myself are very.
I apologize. We forgot one of our representatives. Mr. Gardev is here. I think that we have to call him in the round table. Sorry. Sorry for the interruption.
Yes, I think so. This is doable. I think we can have funds on this. And I am thinking, for example, to Creative Europe as funding this, for example. But the most important and more important than funding is the idea. Our university and our partners already, our European partners and all around the world, we are in many alliances. And I think those alliances, they are very important when you have to develop, when you want to develop, when you want to exchange your experiences and your way of thinking about performing arts. This is the most important. And I think that in this part of the world, in this part of the Europe, we have something in common. And I would begin to say the common thing, most important maybe, is our mythology. It's an idea, and it's kind of an offer to you all to think maybe we can begin from mythology to have kind of a festival, and with the festival conference to speak about how we are doing, how we teach, how we develop performing arts here in this part of the world. This is very important. Our university began with all these countries around, and I spoke with many of them to begin to have kind of a pole in this region, to begin to meet each other with each other and sharing experiences and the way of thinking arts. I think that the way we think about arts, it's something particular. In the Europe, for sure, and in the world for sure. And I think we have to establish what's important here, what are the roots and tradition with the new technologies, for example, that we are interested in. very much, and we invested a lot. But the tradition have to be the beginning for this, and our students, our teachers, our audiences have to have the link with the tradition and with the new era that is already here. So for us, it's important. Please consider us as partners. We have this experience in international links and alliances. We have in Romania, for example, you have to know this maybe. This year is 191 years of theatrical institutionalized arts, in theatrical art. So almost 200 years of school for theatrical arts. It's a lot. So we are interested in this. I know your history. I don't have the volume to show you the book, our book that was published at UNATC Press, my university, with you, people from here. So we believe in doing things fast, well thinking, but together, because I think it's important to preserve, to conserve the tradition. This is the main point. Please consider us as partners, and thank you for inviting us here. We are with students here. You will see them tomorrow. We are here with teachers, and I'm thankful to my colleagues to be here. And please ask us, propose us. We are here to build. Thank you.
Right. Liviu, thank you so much. Let me note that tomorrow afternoon we'll present this volume that you mentioned. It's a great collaboration between our university and yours, and we are grateful. You mentioned mythology, you mentioned technology, and this synthesis is very important for our project, for our mutual project. And I would like to ask Professor Medenica, I hope that I'm pronouncing your surname correctly, and then I will give it over to Artistic Director Pastakis. How can we combine mythology and technology in this era? It's quite difficult. It's a daunting project.
Yes, it's very difficult question to answer. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Pastakis and the organizers of this very important conference for having me here. I do not think that only mythology and technology are questions that could be raised out of our common Balkan cultural identity ground, so to say, that there are some other questions that also could be raised on a very general level. And if you allow me, there was a lot of talking from your side, Professor Markanatos, sorry for my pronunciation.
That's a good try.
Markantonatos.
It's a Roman.
Yeah, it's a bit better. And from the side of Mr. Pastakis as well, how one festival dedicated to the Balkan cultural identity could be founded, conceptualized, framed as an annual event, maybe as a rotating event as well, etc. One thing that maybe you don't know, in Serbia, we already have a festival, and I think it's a unique case in the region. We already have a festival which is dedicated uniquely to the theater cultures from the region of the Balkans. It is the youngest festival that exists in my country. It was founded in 2019 in the National Theatre of Niš, which is the third biggest city in the country, located on its south near the borders with both Bulgaria and North Macedonia. The name of the festival is very, how to say, very convenient and to its concept, and very kind of, fitting to the concept. It's Theatre on the Crossroad, in Serbian, Festival of the Theatre on the Crossroad Festival, Teatra na Raskršću. The concept of this festival, of its initial board, was to focus on the artistic excellency of the performances from the Balkan region. But unfortunately, for that ambition, festival has never had an adequate budget. When you are insisting on artistic excellency as the unique criterion. There were other reasons, so I'm giving not an example of a good experience, but an example of a bad experience, which also could be a kind of comparative point. The festival was unlucky from its start. One edition was, so it was founded in 2019. One edition was cancelled due to the pandemic of coronavirus, of course. And then the other one was postponed from its original period, which is the month of March to month of September, for the same reason. Then there was one political scandal, which was quite a big one. At one edition, there were a few cancelled performances due to this political reason. This year there was the initiative, the President of the Republic, to become the general patron of the festival, which in normal circumstances would be a great achievement, something from which the festival could get the benefit of, but especially in terms of its budget. But as the Serbian president, as you may know, there was the biggest rally in the history of my country yesterday in Belgrade, with 300,000 people protesting against our president and its regime. Regarding this fact, regarding the fact that theater artists, intellectuals, citizens in general are resisting our regime, this idea was not accepted with great enthusiasm. So there was a few cancellation of the performances, not from Serbia, because this would be politically not possible, but directed by Serbian directors in the region, in North Macedonia, I think, and in Romania, two theaters, one from Romania and one from Macedonia, supporting their directors who are Serbs, resigned from the festival. But even without these extraordinary problems, and now I will come to things that I think are of the common interest, festival has been facing challenges from its beginnings. One of the initial challenge is not connected to the many health or political issues, but to the lack of an elaborated conceptualization of the festival program. This refers both to the main program, so select performances, and the side programs, such as conferences, debates, books, presentations, stage readings, etc. Neither in the main program nor in the side programs are there any contents that examine various aspects of the Balkan cultural identity in the field of theater, which I think is the most necessary thing, and not just to gather performances or programs which are coming from the region, but to conceptualize it. None of the following questions was raised, and I will now just offer, as we're running out of time, few questions that could be conceptualized as a possible themes or topics of the festival or some of its editions. Which nations, for example, from the geographical region of the Balkan identified with its identities and which do not, and why? We know that not all of the nations coming from the region of the Balkans like to identify themselves with the Balkanic identity. For example, Slovenians and Croats have problems identifying with this identity. We heard an excellent opening speech about the notion, geographical and historical notion of the Balkans. We don't have any, I think, issues with the south, east, west borders of the Balkans, but as Maria Todorova is writing, what are the north borders of the Balkan? It's a very tricky issue and how to say, an issue for debate. What are the aspects of this identity that are represented in our contemporary, for example, playwriting and theater? Is the satirical approach towards nouveau riche, corrupted, self-proclaimed, ignorant, and primitive social elite, so to say, like in the prose about Baja Ganja by the Bulgarian author Alek Konstantinov, or in the comedies by Serbian classic Branislav Nušić. So is this satirical tone and satirical approach towards nouveau riche elite the main tendency of our theater cultures regarding the Balkan identity, especially classical playwriting? What about the sense of humor? Are there certain similarities within the regional cultures regarding our sense of humor? Can one agree with Eugen Ionesco's claim that there is no sense? This is also a fantastic point which I found in Maria Todorova. She's quoting one of the early writings of Eugen Ionesco, one of his rare writings, which was written in Romanian and not in French. He claims that there is no sense of irony on Balkans, only a rough peasant bantering. Could we agree with this notion that there is no irony on the Balkans? Is the sense of absurd genuine feature of the Balkans culture, like in the plays by Ionesco himself, plays by contemporary Serbian playwright Dusan Kovačević, or famous movies by Yugoslav, so to say, filmmaker Emir Kusturica? How is the Balkan identity interwoven with the bordering identities, those that are presented in the same geographical frame? Mediterranean identity, Middle European, Ottoman identity, etc. Could we at all speak about Balkan identity and not having in mind how much it is interconnected with all these other identities? So, to cut the long story short, even if one neglects the objective problems that this festival theater of the crossroads has been facing since its beginnings, some structural problems were inherent to its concept. It hasn't been examining neither through the selection of the performances for the main program, nor through the side programs, the different aspects of the Balkan cultural identity. That's how we come to a paradoxical situation. Although there is a festival dedicated to Balkan theater cultures, this identity is still a kind of a blind spot in my country. So I really hope that an initiative like this one would help us to join all of you in working on our common cultural identity of theater. Thank you.
Right. Ivan, thank you so much. I give it over to Asterios. I'm afraid we're running out of time. Just please be very brief in your remarks. So, Asterios.
I will be very,
if you please.
yes, no worry. I just want to say that we already knew about the festival in Serbia, but we are thinking about the innovation of this new net between Balkan region in this futuring network of performing arts. And I think that we have to think about about both the subject areas, both practice and theoretical play in this new era of this creation. So I just want to say that I have already take place with my speech. So I only want to say that I think that we have to act fast and to try to take these programs, maybe with your help. So I think that we have to act fast and to do it now. That is the point, and I don't want to say anything else. Thank you very much.
Right. That's the action plan, to to go on very fast. You've been very brief and succinct. So thank you so much. Our next guest is Professor Unkowski. I don't know. Unkowski. I'm sorry. Unkowski. So please, for your remarks.
I thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to be here. I'm actually in this building. I've been in this building many years ago, working on the performance. As I was in Sofia, as I was in Tirana, Belgrade many times, and Bosnia, Slovenia, and other countries of Balkans. Never mind, they accept to be part of the Balkans or not. I'm like many directors in Balkans. We are already in this initiative. We are already doing this, working on different countries and trying to make connection. Let me tell a short story about the beginning of all this idea. During Thessaloniki, capital of culture many years ago, one Greek businessman with his Rolls Royce came to me to discuss the idea of opening a kind of center for cultural exchange on Balkans Peninsula. And each country should open an office with the ambassador for culture. And also we discussed the possibility of kind of cultural passport for easy traveling of all these artists. And after the festival finished, and nothing happens. And I'm really happy to see that now we have more serious and more active initiative, and I would like to support, and I will do my best to share these possibilities and ideas in my country. I like very much what Professor Markantonatos said. I like very much you did the list of everything that has to be done, and I don't have nothing to add.
That was an offer.
But it was
an offer and an effort.
It was long-range plan. It was planned for many years. It's not easy to reach immediately, of course, but we could start, and we are in goodwill and with good ideas, and with the exchanging of the performance and other things. In ex-Yugoslavia, there is another festival beside this that Professor Medenica mentioned, and the name is Ruta. It's a festival of the city theaters from different countries, now earlier different republics of Yugoslavia. They have exchanging of the performances, they have festivals, and they have some kind of joint project and many other things. And I think this everybody knows that mixing of language, mixing of culture, mixing of feeling about problems of contemporary life in the Balkans are commons, and we could find easily language and ideas about this. I would like to be really short, not because I said everything, but I think we are running out of time, and this is the most important thing. And I hope so that this action will finish and not will be somehow only support of other political or other things, but really from the theater, from the practitioner of the theater especially. Because the theory, I'm not against, sorry, I'm not against, I support the theory and all this analysis, but I think the practitioners of the theater are keeping theater doing forward, steps forward, and researching different things. And I would like to thank you to being part of this big beginning, I believe. Thank you.
Right. Slobodan, thank you so much for your remarks. We're going straight to Yannis Rigas, who is the director of the drama school of the theater here. Just please be very concise and brief because we're like half an hour late.
Don't worry.
Feel very bad.
I have a problem, actually. My problem is that from the beginning, today, I have two problems. From the beginning today, outside, we were very happy. And suddenly we came inside and we are not happy. I mean, we are very serious. I can't understand why. That's the first problem I have. The second problem is that we have to talk in English. And I think I also, my first language was English. I mean, I love English, but okay. But we use English not if we want to talk for culture, because culture is something more. And I'm afraid that because I believe in tradition and so on, so if we talk about the tradition of your country, we have to translate it in English and then translate it in Greek, and we lost everything. Yeah.
Artificial intelligence is very close.
Yeah.
We will use it.
No, there's nothing. No, I believe that if we want to be together, we have to think a bit more about the Balkans and what we really want. And if we want to communicate with a language which is not a Balkanian language, then probably we're going to lose. I'm sorry. I mean, I need to learn. Okay. Yes, I need. I'm guilty. I don't speak Bulgarian, Serbian, Romanian, and so on. If we really want something which is not a commercial communication,
Lingua franca.
It's something more.
That's what we need.
Especially
we don't have it.
If we talk about education and so on.
We have to learn Russian in order to
No,
communicate with all Balkan regions.
we have
Slavic.
I'm sorry, but 1970, I'm sorry, I have a big age. How old are you?
Today, around 1,000.
1,000?
Yeah, today.
Jesus. We were in Paris, and me and some others, and we were at the Quartier Latin, and we were about 40 people from different countries. We didn't speak English, but we communicated because I think culture has nothing to do more than love. So we can communicate with a different way. Thank you. That's it.
Right, Yannis, you're so right. Love and goodwill is an international language, and it brings us all together, especially the Balkan peoples. Starting from the Greek people to the Romanian people, going to Romanian and Bulgarian and Serbian.
We hide speaking English. I'm sorry, that's what I mean. We don't speak our real language.
Yeah, but
And
I wish we knew, Bulgarian or Romanian. Romanian is a Latin language. I mean, if you know Latin, you can speak Romanian, for example.
But we have the art language in common, so we will communicate with the language of art. That's the point.
Right, okay. We're going straight to Professor Voutouris, Panteli, it's like Panteli.
Μου αρέσανε πάρα πολύ αυτά που είπε ο κύριος Ρήγας για τη γλώσσα. Εγώ θα μιλήσω στα ελληνικά. Θέλω πρώτα να σας πω ότι εκπροσωπώ εδώ πέρα σε αυτό το συνέδριο τον θεατρικό οργανισμό της Κύπρου και βεβαίως υπάρχει μια καταρχήν απορία σε ένα θεωρητικό τουλάχιστον επίπεδο ποια είναι η σχέση της Κύπρου με την Βαλκανική Χερσόνησο, αν το δούμε στην γεωπολιτική του διάσταση του ζήτημα, ή με την βαλκανική κουλτούρα, την παράδοση, την κληρονομιά, αν το δούμε στην πολιτισμική του διάσταση το ζήτημα. Σκεφτόμενος αυτά τα πράγματα μου ήρθε στο μυαλό μια φράση από ένα μυθιστόρημα του Βασίλη Γκουρογιάννη, «Κόκκινο στην πράσινη γραμμή», το μυθιστόρημα το οποίο αναφέρεται στην Κύπρο, στα γεγονότα που συνέβησαν στην Κύπρο το 1974. Γράφει λοιπόν ο Γκουρογιάννης ότι κάποτε η Ελλάδα ήταν ένα μαρμάρινο άγαλμα πολύτιμο, το οποίο κάποια στιγμή γκρεμίστηκε από το βάθρο του και τα κομμάτια του θρηματίστηκε και τα κομμάτια του σκορπίστηκαν σε διάφορες κατευθύνσεις. Όσοι καθαρίζουν πατώματα, λέει, ξέρουν πολύ καλά σε τι απίθανα σημεία μπορεί να σφινωθεί ένα κομμάτι από ένα βάζο που θρηματίζεται. Λοιπόν, για να μην πολυλογώ, ένα κομμάτι από αυτό το άγαλμα πήγε και σφινώθηκε εκεί στο άκρο της νοτιοανατολικής Μεσογείου. Και το σκέφτομαι ότι αυτή η λογοτεχνική μεταφορά είναι και μια απάντηση στην απορία, έτσι όπως τίθεται, για τη σχέση της Κύπρου με έναν πολιτισμό, τον πολιτισμό της βαλκανικής χώρας, τον οποίο ενδεχομένως και ως άνθρωπος που έζησα προσωπικά πολλά χρόνια στην Βόρεια Ελλάδα, τον αισθάνομαι πάρα πολύ οικείο, αλλά νομίζω είναι και πολύ κοντά στον πολιτισμό, με την άποψη ότι η Κύπρος μετέχει σε αυτό τον κοινό πολιτισμό, αν μπορούμε βέβαια αυτόν τον πολιτισμό να τον προσδιορίσουμε, και αυτό είναι και ένα από τα ζητούμενα αυτής της ιδέας αυτού του συνεδρίου. Για να κλείσω το θέμα με τη μεταφορά του Γκουρογιάννη, η σκέψη μου είναι ότι το κομμάτι από το θράψμα, από το άγαλμα που έπεσε, μάλλον από το κεφάλι έφυγε. Γι' αυτό και πρέπει να ήταν πάνω ψηλά στην Βόρεια Ελλάδα, δηλαδή το θράψμα αυτό. Λοιπόν, ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ τους διοργανωτές αυτού του συνεδρίου για την πρόσκλησή τους. Δεν θα αναφερθώ σε πράγματα για να μην επαναλαμβάνουμε. Ο κύριος Μαρκαντονάτος και ο κύριος Πελτέκης στις εξαιρετικές εισηγήσεις τους έχουν διαγράψει πάρα πολύ καθαρά το πλαίσιο, τα σημεία, ιδέες για το τι πρέπει να αναζητήσουμε, προσπαθώντας να υλοποιήσουμε αυτή την ιδέα. Να πω ότι πρόκειται για μια ιδέα που μόνοι συμφωνώ ότι είναι πάρα πολύ σημαντική. Είναι το πρώτο βήμα και πιστεύω και εγώ ότι με ταχύτητα και διάθεση μπορεί να εκπληρωθεί. Χαίρομαι γιατί και η Κύπρος θα αποτελέσει μέρος αυτής της συγκρότησης, αυτού του δικτύου. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Professor Voutouris, thank you so much for your remarks. We're going
Να το μεταφράσουμε.
I will have to translate first. And we're going over to Professor Vasiliev and then Professor Galileas.
So I will be brief. I'm here representing the theatrical organization of Cyprus. So my question does not concern particularly a theoretical level, but a more practical one. So how is Cyprus related to the Balkans in terms of geopolitical terms, and also in terms of culture? Is it part of the Balkanic culture and tradition? So I thought of sharing a phrase from a novel that I really like. So the book is called Red on Green Line, and it talks about the events of the Turkish invasion in Cyprus in 1974. So the author mentions in his book that Greece used to be a glorious statue that was eventually destroyed, and its pieces were scattered everywhere. So people who needed to clean those pieces always found them in the most unexpected places. It is a metaphor, obviously. So one of those pieces was located in Cyprus. And I think that this literary metaphor could actually be the answer to the question of what is Cyprus' relation to the Balkans. Me, myself, I lived in northern Greece for a couple of years, and I feel really close to the Greek culture and to the Balkanic culture. And I think that my Cypriotic culture is also related to the Balkans in one way. So this sums up the definition of the relationship between the Cypriotic and the Balkan culture. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here, and I don't want to be repetitive. What Mr. Markadonakis and Mr. Peltekis said, Markadonatos, sorry, and Mr. Peltekis said was really informative. They talked about their ideas and challenges and what we need to do in order to actually realize this network. So I think this is a really important first step, and if we move fast, we can actually make it come true. And I think that Cyprus can indeed be a part of this network. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the translation. As I said before, we have to move on to Professor Vasiliev.
In this case, I will represent him, or on his place I will speak, yes. He felt sick this morning and I have to excuse him for his absence right now. I'm Mladen Alexiev and I'm head of the International Department of the National Theatre of Bulgaria that Mr. Vasiliev is heading. We're both not professors, but thank you for the trust. I have a few comments to make. And maybe first the perspective from which I speak. It seems there is really persistent desire in the region for forming networks. I'm 44 of age and I'm joining such discussions since 2001. So it's my 24th year of joining such discussions about creating networks. I have been involved into the discussions of several initiatives of the sort. Last year, as the new policy or the present policy of the National Theatre of Bulgaria is the international opening and cooperation. So in February last year, we also initiated a meeting for forming a network, a Balkan network for cooperation, limited to the national theaters, and trying to establish exchange routes between us in different countries. Hopefully, it is still not confirmed, but it's very likely that this autumn, in September, we will be hosting in Sofia the first edition of a Balkan showcase, or actually like Southeastern European showcase, which will be a pilot, just experimental format to test if this is what are the conditions that we need to fight for in order to make such an initiative sustainable. Of course, we are aware of Ruta Festival, and the rotational principle is really economically viable and also adequate, like kind of in line with the need to disseminate works in different countries, from different Balkan countries, in different Balkan countries. So the format that we have discussed is biennial festival that is rotating as well in terms of hosts, where it will be hosted. I still cannot confirm, will it happen in September or not? Which also is in line with what was shared about the theater on Crossroads Festival. And here, my remarks are this. The main issue with these networks is sustainability. We are in a region that is very, how to say, like politically and economically unstable. Also, it seems there is kind of one of the basic characteristics that we have is lack of national integrity in terms of international policy. So we are very easily trapped in different camps, being it Russian, being it American, being it whatever, you name it. And very often we are not able to form our own policies, which immediately results into lack of continuity in certain cooperations or funds for specific initiatives as Balkan cooperation. So I don't know a government that really prioritized this like long-term, or a country that really dedicated continuous effort in this. And the other obstacle that is, I think you also, like this network also needs to have in mind is mandates. So the institutions are run in mandates, as you know, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And each head of an institution, if one head is willing to participate, to dedicate money, effort, to be host of such event, the next one, there is no guarantee that the next one will do the same. So I think when sustainability is a topic, this also needs to be considered. And actually, in giving our example, I don't want to say that we already did it or anything like that. Not at all. I'm just saying that we also dream about the same thing, and I think it's very inspiring that somehow in the region there is this dream to perceive this region as a shared space. And if we extend what you're talking about, this entire report that you made, or like kind of even project proposal almost, with all the points, I think the political, the utopian political horizon that such an effort presupposes somehow or directs towards is kind of a Balkan federation. I'm not proposing it. I'm just saying that maybe we can also be open about that. That when you offer, I mean, it was said exactly Balkan cultural development, or at least this was the translation from Mr. Piltekis' presentation. But so if we talk about Balkan cultural development, we talk about a shared space, and this is federation politically. I mean, just to put it here, nothing to follow. But the other thing that was mentioned was the hubs, the existence of regional hubs as a kind of condition to create such a network. I think in that sense, it's positive that different places initiate such discussions, trying to be hub or a meeting point themselves. And if we did it in Sofia last year and you're doing it now, and I don't know, during BTEF, we were participants in one and the same discussion with Mr. Medenica discussing Jugofuturism, which I think is another symptomatic, like proposed by Maska magazine from Slovenia, by the way. And it's, if also we kind of have desire to leave this space as a shared space, and this is one thing. The other thing is that continuously, like kind of repeatedly, there is also this desire to formulate a local identity, regional identity. And I think the Jugofuturism attempt was in this direction. The Balkan network or Southeastern European network is the same desire manifesting in different shape. So I think it's healthy, it's useful. I would love to, I mean, for sure, our institution is interested in cooperating for this initiative, at the same time maintaining what we started already. And I don't think that they contradict, because multiculturalism, like pluralism, what was also quoted, like all this, you know, kind of this vocabulary was mentioned already. Well, yeah, we don't contradict it. These are efforts in the same direction, I would say. So it's good that we keep ourselves informed, and possibly this space kind of expands. So also that our interactions expand. And yeah, thank you. I will leave it here. So yeah.
I would like to mark that exactly for those reasons that we hear now, there is a need for a strong institution, because people change, leave, but institutions stay.
If I may, yeah, one last remark. Thank you for that. The kind of also the seduction of the European money. One last thing too, I would say. I mean, I haven't seen project funding creating lasting change unless it is not taken locally by an institution. Just because they have a horizon, they have priority, like kind of objectives, they have their own rules. And what I see very often is very noble desires and ideas being smashed in order to fit into a proposal, and then partially realized in the making, and not actually achieving, you know, kind of not asking the question, the long-term questions of a real change, so to say, cultural, institutional, organizational, maybe even social, because it was mentioned.
Right, okay. Thank you for representing the National Theatre of Sofia in Bulgaria. We have to move on to Associate Professor Christos Galileas, who is a concert violinist. I would like to hear his remarks. Please be very brief. We have only 5 minutes. I'm very sorry for this and for being so difficult. Okay. Right. And yeah, we can wrap it up with.
So I'll try and keep it short and sweet, as they say. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure being here and being part of this distinguished panel and listening to these wonderful ideas about our common interests. I'd like to start out by congratulating the organizers of this wonderful initiative, the State Theatre of Northern Greece, its president, Professor Gianna Karibali, its artistic director, my good friend, Asteris Peltekis. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure. And, you know, as I heard my colleagues speaking, I realized that we're very fortunate to be given this platform here today to exchange ideas and hear what everyone has to say. I spent 27 years living in the US, and I realized that what they say about, you know, trying to understand one's culture, the best way of doing that is experiencing a different culture first. And that gives you an opportunity to step out of the box and look inside from the outside. I've been fortunate to have performed extensively in the Balkans as a violinist, especially Romania, Liviu, performed with many wonderful orchestras like the George Enescu Philharmonic, wonderful venues like the Athenaeum in Bucharest. So this is a part of Europe that I feel very close to, and I'm glad we all got together to discuss how can we further develop our collaboration. I know that many organizations are doing this on their own, but I think this initiative will provide us an opportunity to do this collectively and in a more coordinated way. Coming back to Greece to serve as the artistic director of the Thessaloniki Concert Hall, which is a major public cultural organization, I realized that we're very, very lucky in Europe, or most parts of Europe, if you will, because we have the luxury, if I may call it that, to be part of a system where the arts are public and supported by the state. That's a big deal. And this is coming from someone who lived in the other side of the pond for many years and experienced a different system. And don't get me wrong, we could use the help of the private sector, of course, and the two are not mutually exclusive by any means. But what I've come to realize as the artistic director of a major public organization, arts organization, is that when you have the support of the state, you are being given a tremendous opportunity to make decisions based on artistic criteria and not commercial. And that's something that we shouldn't take for granted. It's a huge advantage, and I hope it stays that way. Every time I hear about culture and the art world being sustainable or viable, now my answer to that is, sure, it would be great if it's, you know, self-sustainable, but I don't think that's our goal as artists. We're on the creative side of things. And like I said, if we put our heads together and have a joint effort, coordinated effort, which this forum, you know, does. And again, thank you for providing us with this platform. I think we can be very, very successful. And I know that the notion of the interdisciplinary arts is not something new, but I think we can cultivate it even further. And at the end of the day, I think I speak for everyone, as artists and as art organizations or educational institutions. I'm also a professor of violin. I've been a professor of violin in university for 18 years now, so I understand the challenges that come with that. I think that our goal is to ultimately serve the public. As long as we stay true to that, I think we can be very, very successful. And because of our time constraints, I'm not, you know, I'm just going to end it here. Thank you again, and good luck to everyone.
Okay, Grigoris, thank you so much for your remarks. I keep what you said about, you know, being in a different country, in an alien country, and savoring all these traditions from Europe across the pond. And now, last but not least, I give it over to our good friend, Mr. Gardner, just your remarks. Please be very, very brief. Very
Okay.
sorry,
Thank you very much.
these constraints.
Sure. Yeah.
We have to wrap it up.
Yeah,
in
thank
like
you.
5 minutes.
Thanks a lot, and thanks, Mr. Peltekis, for being so insistent on me joining. Apparently, there's something pretty important here, and this is sustainability. And I will try to end this with a joke in a way, which is very important to my point here. And my point is that overall Balkan identity is being used by us when it suits us. Sometimes, most of the times, we are actually trying to separate from it. And very often, we kind of acquire it. For example, when it comes to partying, we are very much into the Balkan identity. When it comes to managing things and sustaining them, we are kind of less into the Balkan identity and trying to separate from it. So there are these forums online that are discussing the Balkan identity, and once I came to a statement that was based on the very perception that Stara Planina, the Balkan, is in Bulgaria, and this is how the Ottoman Turks called these mountains, and this is why the Balkan area is. So, and it was full of people kind of separating from the Balkan identity and proving that they're not part of the Balkans, Croats, Slovenians, Serbs, too many, so everybody. And at the end, one of the users said, okay, since it is only in Bulgaria, then we are the only Balkan country, and all of you are wannabes. And then everyone, on a basis of the reactive sovereignty, started to prove that they are even more the Balkans than Bulgaria is. So this tradition of K.Th.V. Schrödinger's identity of kind of being there in the box and not being there in the box, and usefully being used once for one purpose and then for another, I think is going to be stimulated by these cultural activities, but it's also very important that we have basic political decisions in that regard. And in that sense, the most important thing, even most important, I think, than having these cultural initiatives that are sometimes kind of a PR of something that behind is different, is the real integration. For example, opening the borders between Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece is something that would provide this fusion that we're talking about without it being enforced at all. It will bring us, after all these wars and separating, to something that will start to develop naturally. And I think in that regard, the most important thing is the integration of the Western Balkans into that space, common space. Opening the borders is more effective than cultural initiatives, because sometimes cultural initiatives, they're very useful and they're very good, of course, but they sometimes paint a picture of something that has a problem behind. And we need to develop these connections because they're essential and useful, but also work for the hard political decisions which will bring the region into some kind of coherence, possibility for coherence, which wouldn't be kind of forced or programmed. And this, of course, will bring our efforts further, and then the sustainability will be much easier to achieve than it is now. That's my opinion. Thank you very much. And also,
thank you for your remarks.
I would like to mark that Mr. Gardev made a great performance in the National Theatre of Sofia of Bulgaria. If you have the opportunity, you have to go to take a look.
I think we are done. I don't know if there are any secondary remarks on what we heard. Thank you so much, all of you, for your remarks, for your thoughts. They've been very valuable. I will continue all this brainstorming tomorrow in the morning. Again, I'm really grateful for all of you, for your participation.
Let's have a photo all together, all the speakers, please. All the speakers, to have a photo in group. And for the tonight performance of Asterios Peltekis, please let me know how many of you will be with us of the speakers tonight.